Chapter 2454. Song Qingshu frowned. He was also worried about this problem. If Peerless City fell, with Temujin's habit of raping the wives and daughters of his enemies, Gu Zixian would be in real danger. Should he rescue her before that happened? But there was also the risk of being exposed. Dan Yuru looked at his expression and said, "Young master, I have an idea." "Oh." Song Qingshu was surprised. "What is it?" "We can make Peerless City surrender," Dan Yuru replied. "In addition, we can make the princess appear as the fiancée of the young master of Peerless City. That way, Temujin won't touch her again." "Surrender?" Song Qingshu fell in a deep thought. The history books did mention that the Mongols were cruel when they massacred cities, but they rarely mentioned that the Mongols were kind to those who surrendered. The cities they massacred were usually those who resisted from beginning to end and caused the Mongols many losses. In a sense, the Mongols' massacre was a tactic. When other people saw that those who surrendered would still be rich and powerful, and those who resisted would not be spared, reality proved that this method was very effective. Many places in history surrendered at the sight of the Mongols. Even if the defending generals were unwilling to surrender, they would still be forced to surrender by their subordinates or the local people. Seeing his silence, Dan Yuru quickly said, "Young master, you may not know Temujin well. I have been to Mongols for so many years that I know his habits. He would never bully the wives and daughters of his subordinates, and he would not touch the women of those who surrendered. He is worried that if he sets a bad precedent, no one will dare to surrender to him in the future." Song Qingshu nodded. He had heard about this before. It was not a bad idea to have Peerless City surrender on their own. The Mongolians had always been kind to those who surrendered. They would usually keep their positions and troops, and those who surrendered only needed to hand over their hostages to Helen City. This would not destroy the combat strength of their original faction, and it could also ensure that they would not easily betray them. In history, the Mongols only had about 100,000 soldiers, but the number of armies that swept through the world was more than 1,000,000. Most of the servant armies were recruited through this method. He was not too worried about Peerless City increasing the strength of the Mongols after they surrendered. At most, they could rebel when the time was right. In history, the leader of the Red Coat Army, Li Quan, suddenly rebelled and surrendered to the Song dynasty after they surrendered, causing a lot of trouble for the Mongols. In history, Li Quan could not do anything alone, but if he allowed the Mongols to flourish everywhere, how could he have the energy to suppress the rebellions everywhere? Dan Yuru noticed his expression and knew that he already had an idea, so she stopped talking about it. "Young master, it's getting late. Aren't you going to rest?" Song Qingshu answered, "I'm circulating my internal energy. It might take a while." Dan Yuru exclaimed in admiration, "No wonder you can become a great guru at such a young age. Your self-discipline and hard work are really unmatched by ordinary people." "I'm not that hard-working." Song Qingshu blushed. Although he was hard-working, it was mainly because of the blissful zen that he achieved his current level of cultivation. Dan Yuru, who was originally kneeling in front of him, suddenly got up and crawled in front of him. "Young master, are you lonely? Do you want me to accompany you?" Noticing her beautiful eyes and the moist luster on her red lips, Song Qingshu's heart skipped a beat. However, he still declined, "But I still need to circulate my internal energy to heal." He was not made of iron. These days, he had been running back and forth between Sea Lost and Princess Yaluan. Of the two women, one was as passionate as fire, and the other was as gentle as water. Moreover, they were at the peak of their maturity. They could be described as two juicers. Even he was a little overwhelmed. VP now that he was in the stage of a sage, his thoughts were more rational than usual. He was still not sure how much Dan Yuru truly loved him and how much was fake. Before figuring it out, he could not simply touch her. Hearing his answer, Dan Yuru was not too surprised. However, there was a hint of bitterness in her tone. "Everyone says that young master is a playboy. Why do I feel that young master is more of a gentleman than Lu Xiaohui?" Song Qingshu said in a low voice, "It's not easy for you to cultivate your martial arts. For thousands of years, You are the only one in the demonic gate who has mastered the art of seduction. If you lose your virginity, it will definitely affect your cultivation. Moreover, it would be easy for the people in the demonic gate to notice the change in her. If they suspected his identity, it would affect the overall situation. Dan Yuru's eyes lit up. So young master is worried about me. Like a beautiful snake, she climbed up his body and whispered in his ear, "Young master, you don't have to worry about this. In fact, there are ways to play without losing your virginity." Song Qingshu was stunned. Before he could react, he saw Dan Yuru smiling at him charmingly. She lowered her head and moved closer to his lower abdomen. Song Qingshu gasped. What did she just say? The stage of sage? That was impossible. In the face of a peerless beauty who had mastered the demon sex charm arts for 1,000 years, even a eunuch would be able to rejuvenate you, let alone a normal man. After a night of rest, the next morning, Temujin suddenly ordered the entire army to march day and night towards Peerless City. Song Qingshu finally experienced the power of the Mongolian army's blitzkrieg tactics. Although he had seen the Mongolian army in Gaochang, he had not traveled day and night like this. Every Mongolian soldier had 3 to 4 horses to take turns riding. They did not stop even when it was mealtime. They ate the dried meat they brought with them, drank horse milk wine, or drank water. Even if they ran into a large river, it would not stop them at all. Every Mongolian soldier had a large water pouch sewn from animal skin. When they filled the pouch with water and filled it with air, it would become a life buoy. They would swim across the river and then refill it with water to replenish their supplies. This kind of marching speed completely outpaced the armies of the Central Plains. On the 3rd day, they appeared outside of Peerless City. Galdan had clearly miscalculated. He had received news of the Mongolian army, but he thought that it would take at least 7 or 8 days for them to gather here. By that time, he would have either taken down Peerless City or made a new agreement with them to turn back and deal with the Mongolian army. Otherwise, he would have been able to temporarily avoid them. But the Mongolian cavalry descended from the sky and suddenly appeared outside the city. In an instant, they were caught in a pincer attack from both inside and outside. Zunger's army quickly fell into a state of panic, but Galdan was also a formidable character. After a short moment of shock, he came to his senses. He deduced that the Mongolian army must have traveled a long distance to appear here so quickly. At most, they only had a few % of their fighting strength left. Have everyone change formation. Aim the cannons and guns at the east. Prepare to fight the Mongolians. He waved his whip and said in an unquestionable tone, "Great Khan, if Peerless City's army rushes out and attacks us from behind, we might all be wiped out." Some of the generals began to worry. Don't worry, it was just an internal conflict. The Mongolians are our common enemy. Peerless City will not be so unwise to attack us at this time. Galdan quickly waved the flag and quickly changed the formation of the army. Song Qingshu secretly sighed. This Galdan was indeed a famous general. No wonder he could conquer such a large territory. But it was a little surprising that the enemy army was equipped with so many firearms. Chapter 2455. Seeing that Galdan's army was equipped with such a high rate of firearms, Song Qingshu was full of expectations for them. From his previous contact with them and subsequent intelligence, their firearms should be from the Ross Principality in the west. Other than the firewall, their army was also equipped with quite a few cannons, but they weren't the usual heavy cannons. Instead, they were small cannons tied to the humps of camels, which was why they were called camel cannons. The Mongolian army had been fighting in the west for so many years that they had naturally seen firearms before. In fact, they had some in their army, but they didn't bring them with them this time because they had to move quickly and it was inconvenient to bring cannons with them. They only brought cannons when they couldn't take down a city after a long siege. However, compared to cannons, they preferred to use siege cannons. This was because siege cannons were large catapults, and they could usually be made with local materials, so it would not affect their mobility. The cannons in this era were too heavy, and even though they were more powerful than siege cannons, there was not much of a difference in quality. When considering mobility, The Mongols usually used siege cannons. As for muskets, while they were powerful at close range, their range was far inferior to bows and arrows. Adding on the fact that reloading was troublesome, the cavalry probably only had enough time to fire 1 or 2 volleys of muskets. The Mongolians, who grew up on horseback and excelled at archery, naturally didn't want to use muskets. With a wave of Temujin's command flag, the generals under his command spread out with the Chieshwe army and attacked Galdin's flanks, waiting for an opportunity to create a commotion and an opening. As long as there was a split second of opportunity, the Mongolian cavalry would tear open a hole like a shark and attack from that spot. It was easy to make mistakes on the battlefield, and with the Mongolian army's high mobility, it was easy for the enemy to collapse after a few rounds. However, Galdan was also a famous general of his generation. He methodically moved his troops, using muskets and camel cannons to deal with the flood of attacks. The Mongolians' attacks were thwarted several times, so they changed their strategy and used the range advantage of bows and arrows to fire into the enemy's formation. Song Qingshu could not help but sigh when he saw bullets and arrows raining down on the battlefield. It was unknown how many soldiers were killed every moment. Even a great grandmaster could only protect himself in a head-on confrontation with thousands of soldiers and horses. As for the others, no matter how high their martial arts were, they would only be sending themselves to death if they went up. The difference in martial arts was how long they could last. Song Qingshu was suddenly puzzled. Although the Mongolian army was strong, they had been marching day and night for the past few days, and their fighting strength had been greatly reduced. Why would Temujin immediately send his army into battle, instead of letting them rest for a night and recover their strength to continue fighting? His doubts were quickly answered. Galdan commanded his subordinates to fight with the Mongolian army for several rounds without falling into a disadvantage. But suddenly, there was a commotion in the rear camp. This commotion gradually spread, and his entire formation felt like it was going to collapse at any moment. Song Qingshu's eyes were sharp. In the distance, he saw a group of men and horses appear behind them. Apart from some totems on the flags, there were also some words written on them. Unfortunately, he did not recognize the words, but judging from their clothing, they seemed to be similar to Galdin's subordinates. Not far away, Temujin laughed loudly. So Wang has indeed arrived. Galdin's defeat is certain. Pass down my order, start the charge for the decisive battle. With that, he actually led the charge towards Galdin's camp. Seeing the Khan leading the charge, the morale of the Mongolian soldiers instantly increased 100 times. One by one, they waved their weapons and began a charge. Song Qingshu was among them and had no choice but to follow the flow and charge. Along the way, he secretly observed Temujin. Although he was a great grandmaster, he did not fight barehanded on the battlefield, nor did he use his blood sea and bones technique. Instead, he held a suladin in his hand and used it to pick off anyone who stood in his way. In Mongolian, suladin meant spear and was the symbol of the Mongolian god of war. Suladin were usually black and white, and were called Kalasuladin and Shigansuladin respectively, meaning black and white. Black symbolized war and power, while white symbolized peace and authority. At this time, Temujin was wielding the black Suladin as if he was wielding the scythe of the Grim Reaper. No one was a match for him. Galdin's army finally fell into chaos and began to collapse. From afar, Temujin saw Galdin's flag and couldn't help but yell, "Galdan, let's see where you can run to." Galdan was scared out of his wits. Although he was considered a master and the warriors under him were not weak, how could they compare to a great grandmaster like Temujin leading a group of top-notch masters? Unable to care about the army, he turned his horse around and fled. Where there's life, there's hope. Once he escaped, he would gather his subordinates and plan again. Temujin had obviously thought of this as well. Back then, Galdan had fled from the Naaman tribe like a stray dog, but in just a few years he had managed to build up such a large force. This time, he obviously couldn't make the same mistake. Seeing that Galdan was about to be caught, a group of people suddenly charged out of Peerless City and headed straight for Temujin's position. Because the battlefield was too chaotic and because Temujin was chasing Galdan too fiercely, he was a bit separated from the rest of the army. Of course, with his level of cultivation, he didn't care about such a small matter. In any case, Galdan was already like a stray dog. But now that the people of Peerless City had arrived, there was a new variable. The person at the front of Peerless City was incomparably brave. His two hands seemed to be made of iron, and when he swung them, they were like two giant hammers. Behind him was a group of youths dressed in white. Their sword formation was like a meat grinder, and the slightest approach would cause flesh and blood to fly. Song Qingshu's eyes lit up. These youths' sword formations were indeed not bad. If they could be widely used in the army in the future, wouldn't they be invincible? The experts under Ali Buj's command happened to be in that direction. In order to show their faces in front of the Khan, they all roared and charged forward. At the very front were old acquaintances, Night Owl, Yang Lung, and soul-locking Tai Sui Demo. Of the four experts of Heaven's Mandate sect, Dan Yuru was subdued by him during the Jade Owl soul-stealing battle. Soul-stealing. Hua Fu was killed by him during the siege of the Shixiaoan. Demu's hand was broken, and Yang Lung was seriously injured. Looking at their current appearance, could it be that after this period of rest, their injuries had already healed? Last time in Xixia, you surrounded my Ming-Er. I'll settle this debt with you too. The man at the front of Peerless City roared and swung his arms at the two people. Yang Lung and Demu both took out their weapons and rushed forward. But as soon as they came into contact, their weapons were broken and sent flying. Then, with each blow, the two of them were sent flying with blood spurting out of their mouths. Song Qingshu's eyes narrowed. Yang Lung and Demo were obviously affected by the injuries they had suffered in Xixia. But no matter what, they were still close to the level of a grandmaster, and yet they were still no match for this man. His cultivation was already half a step into the level of a grandmaster. The invincible hand of the hegemon is indeed powerful, but Temujin snorted coldly. Dugu Yifang, Galdan attacked you, and you still came to save him? Song Qingshu suddenly realized that this man was the Duke of Peerless City, Dugu Yifang. This level of cultivation was indeed not bad. Dugu Yifang laughed loudly. We only had a few misunderstandings with Galdan before. In the face of a common enemy, what happened in the past is nothing. It turned out that they had already received news of the Mongols' invasion and had already begun to discuss a truce and alliance. After all, they all understood the principle of mutual destruction. But they never imagined that Temujin's army would arrive at this time, leaving them no time to discuss the details. Temujin said coldly, I heard that Peerless City has a few secret techniques. Today, I will experience them one by one. Right at this moment, Meng Qihang, who was at his side, spurred his horse forward. Great Khan, you're injured, so leave him to me. Chapter 2456. Song Qingshu was instantly amused. This Meng Qihang was really honest, directly exposing Temujin's background. Sure enough, when Dugu Yifang heard the news of Temujin's injury, his eyes lit up. This was a great opportunity. If he could kill or capture Temujin alive, then the entire power structure of the grasslands would be reshuffled. Temujin waved his hand, indicating that he would leave everything to Meng Qihang. Even though he didn't think this injury was a big deal, it was better to have someone else do it for him than to end up himself. Meng Qihang urged his horse forward slowly. Dressed in black, he was tall and mighty, as steady as a mountain. His skin was white, and at first glance he looked like a statue of a god carved from crystal, a beauty that surpassed all living things in the world. Song Qingshu had to admit that he and Pang Ban, the master and disciple, were really flashy. Not just women, even men would think they were handsome. No wonder Jin Bingyun, who had been adopted by Pang Ban since childhood, couldn't help but fall in love with him. Therefore, even though she knew that he was using her as a magic medium, she couldn't bring herself to completely leave him. Dugu Yifang noticed that his opponent's eyes were as blue as a deep lake, like two precious gems wrapped in the night sky. When not moving, they seemed lifeless, but when they flashed, they shone brighter than the brightest stars in the sky. His heart skipped a beat. Having lived in the West for many years, he knew that the people of the demon sect were good at using psychic energy to invade the enemy. Not daring to look at his opponent's eyes again, he roared and raised his aura to the maximum. Then he leaped up and swung his two hammer-like arms at his opponent. Song Qingshu nodded to himself. The invincible hand of the hegemon was worthy of such a domineering name. The aura that erupted in that instant caused the nearby Mongolian warriors to retreat. However, Meng Qihang remained in place on his horse, with no intention of making a move. Du Guifeng secretly sneered. "You're being a bit too arrogant. Even if you can withstand my invincible hand of the hegemon, your horse won't be able to. When the horse stumbles, you'll definitely lose your balance. Then my invincible hand of the hegemon will be endless enough to kill you." Du Guifeng's heart couldn't help but jump when he saw that his fist was only 3 feet away from him. However, the opposite party was still indifferent. Moreover, the corners of his mouth were slightly raised. Du Guifeng's heart couldn't help but jump. But he had no choice but to throw a punch. Bang! A loud sound rang out, and Du Guifeng's eyes instantly widened. That was because he felt as if his fist had struck a transparent wall. It had to be known that he had originally planned for the peak of this punch to completely explode upon hitting Meng Qixing's body. But now it had exploded midway. It had to be known that if one did not pay attention to the steps while walking normally, even a slight step would cause great discomfort to one's body, let alone a full-powered punch of his. The internal energy in his body shook so much that he almost vomited blood. However, he was a top-notch expert after all. His other hand was like an antelope hanging its horn, and he punched out again. Bang! There was another loud noise. From the side, Song Qingshu could clearly see that there was a layer of transparent energy wall 3 feet away from Meng Qixing. Only when Du Guifeng's fist smashed on the energy wall could the traces be seen. His true qi is powerful to such an extent. Song Qingshu subconsciously compared this with the protective true qi of the sweeping monk. The sweeping monk also had a 3 feet thick energy wall. Back then, when Jiao Maji sneak attacked him with the formless finger of disaster, the energy of the finger was automatically dissolved when it was 3 feet away from him. Even Xiao Feng's 18 dragon subduing palms have been dissolved a lot when it came into contact with his energy wall. However, he quickly noticed the difference between the two. Meng Qixing was not releasing his true qi, but more like a thin layer of barrier had appeared out of thin air. Song Qingshu remembered that Dan Yuru had mentioned to him that night that Meng Qixing cultivated the hidden wisdom book, which was good at transforming mental power into physical power. It seemed that this transparent light wall should have been formed by the materialization of his mental power. The people of the demon sect and the tantric sect were all good at mental power techniques. This time in Mongolia, he had encountered countless mental power experts. In the future, he would really have to be very careful when facing them. Du Guifeng was already prepared for the second punch, so it was not as uncomfortable as the first punch. He roared, and suddenly, countless fist shadows appeared in front of him, bombarding the target from all directions. "I don't believe that this stupid wall can block me." Song Qingshu's eyes were wide open. Pegasus Meteor Fist? The invincible hegemon hand was indeed amazing. He had seen Du Guiming use it at the Xixia Inn, but compared to this, it was like comparing a chicken to a phoenix. Unfortunately, Meng Qixing's body was always surrounded by various invisible light walls, and every time, he just happened to block the fist shadows from all directions. Seeing that his opponent did not even move a finger and had blocked his ultimate move, Du Guifeng was a little scared and hurriedly retreated. At this time, he did not care about Galdan anymore. It must be known that Temujin was also a grandmaster. He had always been very conceited and felt that his martial arts were not below Temujin's. Now, he found out that he could not even defeat a subordinate of his opponent. How could not panic? Seeing that he was retreating, Meng Qixing finally moved. He directly waved his wide sleeves. The others were puzzled, thinking, "What are you waving your sleeves for when your opponent has already run away?" Only Song Qingshu could see it clearly. At their level of cultivation, most of the time, they did not just rely on their eyes to see, but also on their senses. Using the mind's eye, he could clearly see two invisible wind blades slashing toward Dugui Fong. Dugui Fong was, after all, also a top expert. In that instant, he felt all the hair on his body stand up, and he hurriedly crossed his arms in front of his body. With a crisp sound, the armor on his arms was instantly torn apart, and his hands were also dripping with blood. Even so, he had still blocked it. But Dugui Fong did not have time to be happy. Suddenly, another wind blade fell on his chest, and a cloud of blood exploded from his back. He looked down at the hole in his chest in disbelief, and then his whole body slumped to the ground. Meng Qixing did not stop. He disappeared from where he stood. When the others rubbed their eyes, they discovered that he had already appeared next to Galdan. The guards next to Galdan were shocked. One by one, they brandished their swords to save him, but they were all blocked by a transparent wall of light. Galdan also hurriedly pulled out the sword from his waist. Unfortunately, the sword was only half drawn when Meng Qixing grabbed his head, twisted it, and directly cut off his head. His deep voice resounded throughout the battlefield. Galdan is dead. Those who surrender will not be killed. Galdan's army had already lost. Now that their commander was dead, and Meng Qixing was like a god, how could they still have the heart to resist? No one knew who started it, but countless weapons fell to the ground, and then the sound of countless weapons falling to the ground could be heard. Galdan's remaining soldiers all dismounted and surrendered. In the whole process, there were several times that Song Qingshu almost made a move, but in the end, the success rate was too low, so he gave up. Let's just follow the original plan. On the top of Peerless City's city wall, Du Guming saw the situation and could not help but cry out. He was angry and scared, and he directly fainted, causing chaos on the city wall. Fortunately, a graceful figure came out and methodically arranged for the city gate to be closed and the defense on the city wall to be strengthened. Only then was the situation barely stabilized. Song Qingshu saw this and secretly nodded. Madam Dual Cultivator is not a vase, but I'm afraid that the fate of Peerless City is not something she can change alone. Chapter 2457. Temujin sent his men to clean up the battlefield and gather up the surrendered soldiers from Galdan's army. Those who resisted were naturally killed on the spot. After that, he ordered his army to set up camp outside the city. After marching for so many days and fighting with Galdan, his soldiers were at their limit. As for Peerless City, it was just an isolated city and couldn't do much. Next, Temujin gathered his generals to discuss the matter of the surrender. This was a Mongolian custom. Whenever they arrived at a place, the first thing they did was not attack, but threaten and bribe to see if they could get someone to surrender. This would save a lot of trouble. In addition, they had encountered resistance in the past few years. They had massacred the city and treated those who surrendered well, so the results were usually very good. But this time, no one dared to volunteer to be the messenger. After all, there was a certain amount of danger involved. In the past few years, there had been quite a few stupid local lords who couldn't beat the Mongolian army, so they took out their anger on the Mongolian messengers and killed them in extremely cruel ways. Of course, the allies would retaliate afterward, but what did that have to do with the dead messengers? No matter how glorious the Mongolians were in the future, he was already dead. In addition, they had just killed the lord of their city, Dugui. If they went in now, wouldn't they just be sending themselves to die? Meng Qihang and Ba Siba were originally capable of protecting themselves in the city, but Meng Qihang was only responsible for Temujin's safety and didn't care about anything else. Ba Siba was also the emperor's tutor, so he wasn't very suitable for this kind of thing. Someone as precious as Ali Buj wouldn't put himself in danger. Just as everyone was looking at each other, Song Qingshu stepped forward and said that he could go. Temujin was overjoyed and rewarded him generously. He then revealed some of the Mongolians' bottom line and told him to act according to the situation. The others knew that the Shui sect had messed up a few times before, so they were eager to make a contribution and were willing to take the risk. Dan Yuru had also offered to go with him, but Ali Buj had rejected him. The reason was that Dan Yuru had brought experts to ambush Peerless City in western Xia, and going now would have the opposite effect. In reality, he didn't want his subordinates to take the risk. After all, his subordinates were either dead or injured, and the remaining ones were all precious. Temujin, of course, agreed. So Song Qingshu took a few followers with him and went to Peerless City on his behalf. Next, Temujin met with Su Wang, Galdan's nephew. If he had not suddenly appeared on the flank of Galdan's camp with his men and attacked from both sides, it would not have been so easy to defeat Galdan. Song Qingshu looked at him a few more times. He looked quite spirited, but it was a pity that he might not be able to win the beauty's heart in the end. He had already received information that the women of Galdan's family had been captured by the surrendered soldiers and presented to Temujin. Temujin was overjoyed and ordered the two most beautiful women to be sent to his tent so that he could enjoy them later. One of them was Galdan's wife, Anu. The other was originally Su Wang's fiancée, but was forcefully taken by Galdan as a concubine. Because the two women were Galdan's wives in name, Su Wang didn't have any right to get them back. He had already boarded the boat, and there was no turning back now. How pitiful, his own mother and fiancée being taken by two men at the same time. Song Qingshu complained, but he quickly focused on his own matters. He brought a group of retainers to Peerless City. After explaining the purpose of their visit, Peerless City did not open the gates. Instead, they put down a few baskets from the top of the walls for them to sit in before pulling them up. It was obvious that they were worried that the Mongols would play some kind of trick and take advantage of the chaos to break through their gates. Originally, Song Qingshu could have just jumped up the wall, but he was worried that it would cause a reaction from the defending soldiers, so he obediently sat in the basket and was pulled up to the top of the wall. As soon as they landed, a large group of soldiers surrounded them and took away their weapons. Song Qingshu didn't care. It didn't make much difference whether he had a blade or not. Seeing how calm he was, the Mongolian warriors were all impressed and gradually relaxed. The group was brought to the governor's mansion, where all the high-ranking officials of Peerless City were gathered. Song Qingshu noticed that the wife and princess were both present. One was voluptuous and graceful, while the other was elegant and tall. What a pair of beautiful flowers. He felt a warmth in his heart. After so many days, they were still as beautiful as ever. However, at this moment, both Gu Ningxing and Gu Zixian had a layer of worry on their faces. Under the watchful eyes of the crowd, it wasn't convenient for him to reminisce with the two of them, so he told them the reason for his visit. As expected, the two of them, who had just lost their city lord, were furious at this moment, and when they heard what he said, they all cursed angrily. Among them, Duga Ming cursed the most and even wanted to draw his sword to kill him. However, he was immediately stopped by a few others. Clearly, they also knew that the Mongols valued the envoys the most. If the envoys were killed, it would be a massacre in the city. Song Qingshu knew that Dugu Yifang had just died. Even if there were people who wanted to surrender, they didn't dare to show it on the surface. It would be difficult to persuade them in front of so many people. After thinking for a while, he said, "Can I talk to the wife and princess alone?" The other people in the hall frowned. The wife and daughter looked at each other and said curiously, "We don't know each other. What is there to talk about?" Song Qingshu smiled. "That may not be true. I have some news that the wife and princess are interested in." As he said this, he purposely circulated his true qi. The other people didn't care, but the wife and princess were the most sensitive to his technique. Their hearts jumped, and they looked at him with surprise. Then they nodded and said, "Okay." Initially, Duga Ming was unwilling to do so. However, Madame Xiuxiu had always been prestigious. Since she had spoken, no one dared to stop her. Hence, Duga Ming could only lead the soldiers to guard outside. If they were to call for help immediately, he would immediately bring people in. The wife and princess brought him to a secret room. After closing the door, they stared at him. "Who are you?" "Xian'er. Don't you recognize me?" Song Qingshu returned to his original voice. He took off his mask and smiled at the beauty in front of him. "Ah!" Gu Zixin cried out in surprise. She had a look of disbelief on her face, and then she threw herself into his arms. The young girl's body was indeed light and slender. Before Song Qing-shu could say anything, his lips were sealed by the beauty's kiss. As the saying goes, the younger generation is more important than the newlyweds. Moreover, Gu Zixian had thought that she would never see him again. She had already gone crazy with love. Now that she suddenly saw her lover, her passion completely exploded. The two kissed passionately. Their breathing became more and more heavy, and the air was filled with a charming atmosphere. Gu Ningqing felt a little awkward. Seeing that the two of them were about to lose control, she couldn't help it anymore. She cleared her throat and said, "There are people here." Gu Zixian came to her senses and quickly jumped out of her lover's arms. She touched her face and found that it was burning hot. Song Qing-shu was much more thick-skinned. He nodded to Gu Ningqing. Qing-shu greets the wife. Chapter 2458. Gu Ningqing nodded. Why have you suddenly come to the Mongolian camp and become a member of the Shui sect? It's a long story. I'll explain it to you in the future, Song Qing-shu replied. But please keep my identity a secret, or my life will be in danger. What are you talking about, master? Gu Ningqing hurriedly said. You are our savior in Xian Ers. Why would we put you in danger? When she said this, she also felt very awkward. After all, her daughter's relationship with him had not been officially confirmed, but what was done was done. Logically speaking, as a mother, she should fight for some status for her daughter, but he had saved her before, so she didn't know how to say it. Song Qing-shu didn't expect his carelessness to cause her to worry so much. I'm here to solve the crisis you're facing. Now that the Mongolian army is here, and Galdan has been defeated, Peerless City will not be able to hold on. Rather than wait for the city to fall and be slaughtered, it's better to surrender earlier. Surrender to the Mongolians? Gu Ningqing and her daughter looked at each other. They had been enemies with the Mongolians for so many years, and it was hard for them to change their minds. We're not really joining the Mongolians. We're just preserving our strength and waiting for the situation to change before we make a comeback. After all, based on what I understand, the Mongolians treat the forces of power that surrender quite well, and they usually keep their original forces. Song Qing-shu gave a general analysis of the situation. With you as a guarantor, of course we could trust you, but Gu Ningqing's beautiful face showed a hint of hesitation. She glanced at her daughter. Temujin is famous for being cruel and lecherous. I heard that many women died after being raped by him. If he has any ideas about Xian, we won't be able to resist. I've thought about that as well, Song Qing-shu explained. Temujin may be lustful, but he won't let his lust get in the way of his business. Over the years, there have been many forces that have surrendered to him, but he has never touched their women in order to avoid affecting his future recruitment. The Mongolians still have many enemies, so I don't think he'll take such a risk. Women, but Xian? Gu Ningqing hesitated. Song Qing-shu said, as far as I know, Xian and the young city lord of Peerless City were engaged. Now that Dugui Fong is dead, Dugu Ming is the successor of Peerless City. Therefore, with Xian status, Tai Mu won't touch her. Noticing Gu Zixian's pale face, he hurriedly comforted her. Don't worry, this is just an act, not a real marriage. Moreover, I will be by your side at all times. I won't let you encounter any danger. Gu Ningqing felt the need to speak up for her daughter. But this will ruin Xian Er's reputation. In the future, people will only think of her as Dugu Ming's wife. If she continues to be with young master in the future, I'm afraid people will gossip. Song Qing-shu replied, Madam, you've misunderstood. I'm not asking them to marry for real. I'm only asking them to be my fiancée. After all, according to your family's tradition, the princess of the dual cultivation house will be married to the successor of Peerless City. There's no official engagement. The reason for this is to prevent Tai Muzhen from having any evil thoughts. Gu Ningqing's expression softened a little. Just as she was about to say something, Gu Zixian, who was beside her, gently grabbed her hand. Mother, don't worry, I'm willing. Moreover, I won't really lose anything. Song Qing-shu couldn't help but sigh. Xian I'll have to trouble you for now. Don't worry, soon I'll let you regain your freedom, and we'll be together openly. It's nothing. Gu Zixian pursed her lips and smiled. All this time, she felt that she couldn't do anything for Brother Song. This was a good opportunity. If she became the nominal wife of the peerless city lord, it would be perfectly justifiable for her to take over the power of peerless city. As for Du Gaming, she didn't care about that good-for-nothing playboy at all. After that, the three of them discussed a few more details. Then, Gu Ningxing gathered the middle and upper echelons of peerless city for a meeting and announced that Gu Zixian would be betrothed to Du Gaming. Du Gaming, who was originally anxious, was overjoyed when he heard this news. He almost jumped up in joy. One had to know that he had always coveted this beautiful and alluring princess. However, she had always been indifferent to him. Especially after the trip to Western Xia, she didn't even bother to give him face. This made him think that the marriage between the two of them wasn't going to happen. Now that his wish had been fulfilled, the joy he felt made him forget that his father had just died not long ago. Then, when she proposed to surrender, many people subconsciously opposed it. However, in reality, when they saw the Mongolian army pressing down on the city, many people already had the intention to surrender. It was just that they didn't want to show it before. Now that the princess had taken the initiative to propose it, these people jumped out and went along with what she said. Du Gaming, who was supposed to be the most staunch opponent of his father's death, was already overjoyed when he heard that Gu Zixian had agreed to marry him. How could he have any other ideas? He subconsciously went along with what she said. Seeing their leader like this, the other opponents knew that there was no point in continuing to resist, so they accepted their fate and went along with the proposal. Song Qingshu left the city and brought the news to the Mongolian camp. Temujin didn't expect things to go so smoothly and was overjoyed. He even rewarded Song Qingshu with a piece of land and 1,000 herdsmen. Because of the deaths of the Red Sun Dharmaraja and Li Qimei, the status of the Shuiyue clan was now second only to Ba Siba. Everyone in the Mongolian tent congratulated him. Song Qingshu couldn't help but sigh at how generous Temujin was in rewarding his subordinates. If it were anyone else, they would have been moved to tears by his generosity and would have risked their lives for him. The next day, the surrender ceremony was held. Du Gaming, the princess led a group of high-ranking officials of Peerless City out of the city to pay their respects to Temujin. The whole process went quite smoothly, but something unexpected happened during the banquet. Perhaps it was because they had been drinking for a long time, but Temujin suddenly said, "I have long heard that the princess and the princess are the most beautiful women in the western regions, but I have never had the chance to see your faces. Why don't the two of you take off your veils and let us have a look?" Du Gaming panicked and forced himself to say, "Great Khan, the House of Dual Cultivators has a tradition that the appearance of the women in the house cannot be seen by outsiders." Temujin smiled. "Ah, now that you have surrendered to the Mongols, we are all brothers and sisters. How can we be outsiders? Besides, the House of Dual Cultivators has this rule, and we Mongols also have our own. If we don't show our faces, are we not friends?" As he spoke, his tone carried a hint of threat. Du Gaming was intimidated by his aura and didn't dare to say anything else. "No matter. Great Khan's words make sense. We should indeed show our sincerity. It's just that we are ugly, so I hope we won't stain your eyes." As she spoke, she slowly took off the veil on her face, revealing a plump and charming oval face. Gu Zixian, who was standing to the side, was the first to see her. Since the oath she had sworn was broken, she had nothing to worry about and also took off her veil, revealing her beautiful face. The entire tent, which had been very noisy a moment ago, was now completely silent. Everyone's breathing seemed to have become heavier, and the sound of someone swallowing could be clearly heard. It should be noted that either one of them was a dazzling beauty, and now that they were standing together, the visual impact was more than doubled. For a moment, all the men in the tent could only stare in awe. Madam and the princess are truly outstanding beauties. Temujin laughed heartily, a hint of fanaticism flashing across his eyes. "I, Madam and the princess, have many things I would like to learn from. Later, I will be hosting a private banquet in the tent. I hope Madam will come and give me some pointers. The House of Dual Cultivators was, of course, best suited for dual cultivators. The meaning behind his words was self-evident. As soon as he said this, both Gu Ningqing and Gu Zixian's faces paled. Even Song Qingshu's expression changed. All this time, they had been trying to prevent Temujin from harboring any ill intentions towards Gu Zixian, but they had neglected the fact that Gu Ningqing was also a beautiful woman. How are they going to deal with this? Chapter 2459. Song Qingshu hurriedly stood up and said, "Great Khan, Madame Duxiu has kept her chastity for a long time and has always been revered by the citizens of Peerless City. This might be a bit inappropriate." He couldn't care less about offending Temujin. If he really did bully Madame Duxiu, not only would Gu Zixian hate him for the rest of her life, even he himself wouldn't be able to get over it. He quickly thought of a way to protect Madame Duxiu. He even thought of claiming that he had an affair with her, even though it would be a bit awkward, but in order to save her, neither Gu Ningqing nor Gu Zixian would blame him. But he had no choice but to reject this plan. After all, in theory, he and Gu Ningqing had never interacted before. How could they hook up in such a short time just because he wanted to recruit her? Wouldn't that be the same as trying to steal Temujin's woman? No normal subordinate would do that. Unfortunately, even though his mind was working furiously, he couldn't think of a way to protect her in such a short amount of time. Hearing his words, the entire crowd quieted down. Everyone had a strange look on their faces as they waited to see how the situation would develop. A flash of anger flashed across Temujin's face, but he managed to restrain himself and said coldly, "Great Khan, you misunderstand. I only invited Madame Duxiu to discuss the transfer of hostages from Peerless City. After all, we are about to leave for another place, and this matter needs to be settled as soon as possible." The Mongols weren't stupid enough to just listen to verbal surrender. Usually, they would have important local figures provide hostages to Helen City, and Temujin would place them in the Chieshui army. Compared to other armies, it was easier for the Chieshui army to get rewards, and it was also easier for them to be promoted. Because of it, they tied the benefits of the surrender hostages to the Mongolians, and they indirectly tied the surrendered forces to the Mongolians. Unless there was a major change with this method, these people will basically not rebel. Since Temujin had put it this way, there was no way he could criticize him on the spot. He couldn't very well point out that Temujin intended to take advantage of the opportunity to rape Madame Duxiu. Could he? All right, this matter has been settled. Everyone, let's continue drinking. Basiba came out to smooth things over. At the same time, he gave Song Qingshu a look. This matter was considered settled. Gu Zixian couldn't help but look at Song Qingshu for help. Even Gu Ningqing's usually calm eyes had a trace of panic. Song Qingshu secretly said, "Don't worry, I won't let Madam be violated. With his assurance, I will do my best." Although he couldn't think of anything else to do, his uneasy heart calmed down a little. During the banquet, Dan Yuru took advantage of the chaos to come to Song Qingshu's side. While congratulating him on his promotion, she lowered her voice and asked, "What do you plan to do?" Song Qingshu said in a deep voice, "I have a rough idea, but I need to improve it." Dan Yuru asked, "What can I do for you?" "Thank you for your kindness, Hierarch, but there's no need for it for now. Furthermore, this matter is too dangerous. It's best not to involve you," Song Qingshu said. Dan Yuru's face was full of hidden bitterness. "We're already in such a state, yet you keep calling me Hierarch." Ahem, Song Qingshu almost choked. He hurriedly comforted her, and only then did she smile. After the banquet was over, everyone went their separate ways. The dual cultivator's wife was invited away to Temujin's tent. Before leaving, she couldn't help but look back at Song Qingshu. Song Qingshu gave her a reassuring look, then quickly returned to his tent and took out some materials. In the king's tent, the madam sat nervously on a stool. Her hands, hidden in her sleeves, tightly gripped a dagger. She had kept her chastity for so many years, and she didn't want to be defiled by someone like Temujin. What she was hesitating about was whether she should choose to perish together with Temujin or commit suicide. Her kung fu was not weak, and if she suddenly launched a sneak attack, she might be able to hurt Temujin. However, she had heard rumors that Temujin was a grandmaster, and she was not confident. She was also worried that her actions would bring disaster to Peerless City and the House of Dual Cultivators. If the innocent people of Peerless City were to die because of her, it would be too much to redeem herself. But if she had to obey Temujin just like that, how could she be willing? Thinking back to the calm look Song Qing-shu gave her before she left, and the words he had entrusted her with, the madam bit her lip. Now that things have come to this, she could only trust him. I hope he won't disappoint me. Not long after, heavy footsteps could be heard. Temujin, reeking of alcohol, rushed in. The madam's heart tightened. She hurriedly stood up and saluted, at the same time tightly gripping the dagger in her sleeve. Your servant greets the great Khan. With the help of the candlelight, Temujin carefully looked her up and down. Her skin was as white as milk, her face full of lust, and her voluptuous body. All of a sudden, he felt a burning sensation in his lower abdomen. Ha ha ha, everyone says that your daughter is the most beautiful woman in the north, but in my opinion, she is still too young and inexperienced. How could she be as mature and beautiful as you? The madam's heart was beating wildly. She hurriedly replied, You flatter me, great Khan. Your servant has come to discuss the matter of the hostages. Who does the great Khan want as hostages? She did not dare to continue on that topic, so she could only quickly change the subject to proper business. Temujin sat down on the edge of the bed and patted the seat next to him. Madam, you can come and sit. The madam forced a smile. No need, I can stand. She did not dare to sit down. Otherwise, if he took advantage of the opportunity to hug her, the two of them would immediately roll onto the bed behind her. Temujin did not mind. As for the issue of the hostages, he said slowly, all the upper echelons of Peerless City have sent their eldest son to Helen City to join the Chieshui army. However, the governor of Peerless City and the princess of the House of Dual Cultivators are still young and have no children. What do you think we should do, madam? The madam bit her plump red lips. Your servant is slow-witted. I really do not know. Temujin laughed. I have an idea, but I don't know if you are willing. Since we have already surrendered to the great Khan, we will naturally follow his orders, the madam replied. Temujin looked at her with a burning gaze. Wuji's eyes swept up and down her beautiful, round curves. Although they do not have children, they do have other relatives, and that is you, madam. From now on, madam can stay by my side as a hostage. Don't worry, I will treat you well. The madam's expression changed. I'm afraid that's not appropriate. Temujin's words were already so obvious. How could she not understand? Madam, you are no longer an inexperienced little girl. There is no need to beat around the bush with me. If you obey me, I will guarantee that Peerless City and the House of Dual Cultivators will be safe and sound in the future. Otherwise, Temujin was already tipsy and did not want to go around in circles with her. The madam's face was deathly pale. She had finally reached this point. Just as she was at a loss of what to do, Temujin had already pounced on her. With the cultivation of a grandmaster, there was no way for her to dodge. In an instant, Temujin hugged her and kissed her on the face, his breath reeking of alcohol. Come, madam, I will let you know the true happiness of a woman. At that moment, a loud roar came from outside the tent, shaking the entire tent. Who dares to bully the descendant of I, Dugu Chiobot? Chapter 2460. The sound was like a bolt from the blue, shaking all the tents in the camp. The ordinary soldiers covered their ears, clearly stunned by the sound. Temujin couldn't be bothered with bullying his wife any longer. He pushed her aside and hurried outside. Guards, he shouted. Soon, many guards came to report. A mysterious man suddenly appeared. He calls himself Dugus Seeking Loss. His kung fu is very high, and many of our brothers have been injured. Dugus Seeking Loss? Temujin's eyes narrowed. Pang Ban, Tong Tian, and the others had mentioned this legendary figure when they talked to him. But no one had ever seen him with their own eyes. So many people wondered if he really existed. But there was a saying among the demonic sects that the Peerless City Lord was the descendant of Dugu's seeking loss. Most people scoffed at this saying, thinking that it was just a coincidence that the Lord of Peerless City was surnamed Dugu. Some people even try to link the two. But today, after killing Dugu Ifong and destroying Peerless City, Dugu's seeking loss appeared. Could the legend be true? Temujin was a little surprised. According to the legend, Dugu's seeking loss's kung fu was unfathomable. Take my talisman and pass down my order. Everyone is to guard the camp. Remember, do not cause chaos. As a famous general, Temujin knew how dangerous it was to blow up a camp at night. As he passed down the order, he led his men to the most chaotic area. To deal with someone like Dugu's seeking loss, he would have to do it himself. Although the man was said to be powerful, Temujin was confident that his kung fu would not lose to anyone. After Temujin left, the woman clutched her clothes tightly. Her face was pale. Even now, she still had some lingering fear. She had been hesitating whether to die with Temujin or commit suicide. But just now, when Temujin threw himself at her, she could not resist at all. Her martial arts were considered pretty good, but she had been completely powerless in front of the great Grandmaster just now. She had been completely at the mercy of the other party. When he thought about how he would still be humiliated when Temujin returned, he decided that he might as well kill himself while he still had the chance. Thinking of this, the dagger in her sleeve slipped into her hand, and she slashed it at her own neck. Ding! With a crisp sound, she felt a strong force coming from her hand. She couldn't hold on to the dagger in her hand, and it was sent flying. Then, a figure rushed in and hugged her. The lady was shocked and hurriedly attacked the other party with her palm. As a result, the person's fingers pressed on her waist, and she lost all her strength. "Madam, it's me." A familiar voice sounded. The dual cultivator's wife was taken aback and hurriedly looked at the other party. She saw that the person hugging her was a thin old man that she had never seen before. However, this voice was very familiar. It was Song Qingshu's voice. Furthermore, at such a close distance, she could acutely feel the great attraction that the other party's cultivation method had for her dual cultivation method. It was as if there was a warm sun next to her. "Young, Master Song?" She couldn't help but feel a little dazed. She didn't think that he would actually take such a big risk to save her. Song Qingshu smiled. "Don't worry, madam. Since I promised you, I won't let anyone bully you. Let's leave first." With that, he flew out of the tent with his arm around her soft and plump waist. The dual cultivator's wife no longer struggled. Instead, she hugged him tightly and pressed her body against his to avoid any additional resistance. As soon as the two of them left the tent, they were met by a group of warriors. With a wave of his sword, Song Qingshu instantly generated countless sword auras. The spears and swords in the hands of the warriors were all broken, and their chests exploded in a mist of blood. Song Qingshu took this opportunity to escape with the dual cultivator's wife to the outskirts of the camp. Although a grandmaster's kung fu was high, facing an army of thousands was still a stupid idea. "Since your excellency has come, then stay." A voice came, and Meng Qihang appeared from the shadows. Song Qingshu sighed to himself. His previous diversionary tactic had only managed to lure Temujin away, but he was glad that at least one grandmaster had left. Otherwise, he would have been in trouble. Just then, a transparent wall of light suddenly appeared in front of him, blocking his way. He had seen this scene earlier during the day. At that time, the Lord of Peerless City had used all his strength and still could not break this seemingly thin wall of light. Although he was not afraid, he did not want to be entangled. So, he tapped the wall of light with the tip of his foot, and, as if violating the laws of physics, his whole body changed direction and shot out from the side. Meng Qihang was surprised. He did not expect his opponent to change direction at such a high speed so easily. He wanted to set up another wall of light, but the distance was too far. Even if he did, he might not be able to stop his opponent. He could only use his lightness kung fu to give chase. Although Song Qingshu's lightness kung fu was high, he was carrying a person, and his injuries had not fully recovered. It was not easy to shake off a grandmaster. Originally, He had planned to take the dual cultivator's wife into Peerless City and hide her there. But with so many pursuers, and seeing that Temujin had sent people to lock down the camp, he could only start with Plan B. He shuttled back and forth between the tents of the camp, using this to block the enemy's line of sight. Then, he found an opportunity to quickly enter his own tent. Song Qing-shu made a shushing gesture to him, then quickly took out his soldier's uniform. "Madam, put this on, and put on this mask as well. In a moment, there will probably be soldiers going door to search." He had long since prepared another mask to cover up Gu Ningqing's beauty. For the time being, he would let her pretend to be a bodyguard and stay here. Later on, he would see how the situation would develop and whether she would be sent out or not. After all, if he let her return to the house of dual cultivators, he would not be able to do anything if Temujin became lustful again. The madam's face reddened. Although she didn't have countless maids, she could be said to have lived a pampered life. There was nothing in the tent that could hide her. Could it be that she was going to change in front of him? She saw that Song Qing-shu had already turned around and started to take off his clothes. Obviously, he was going to change back into the Shui West sex attire. The dual cultivator's wife gritted her teeth. Knowing that the situation was urgent, she couldn't care less. She quickly untied her belt and changed out of her somewhat flashy palace dress. On the other side, Meng Qiheng suddenly lost track of his target halfway through the chase. He jumped onto a flagpole and looked around with a pair of sharp eyes. He gestured with his finger and said coldly, "That person should be in this area. Search every tent for me." "Madam, are you done changing?" Song Qing-shu changed back into the Shui West sex attire. I'm done changing." Gu Ningqing's voice was a little nervous. Clearly, everyone had taken a great risk today. She was worried that Song Qing-shu would be implicated and also worried about the impact on Peerless City. Song Qing-shu turned around and picked up the clothes that were scattered on the side. He rolled them into a ball and stuffed them under the quilt. Only when he couldn't see any traces from the outside did he stop. The clothes were still warm and had a faint fragrance. He couldn't help but feel a little headache. Why did these women make themselves so fragrant every day? When the time came, it would be easy for them to find out. However, he couldn't care so much now. He looked up and down at Gu Ningqing and helped her tidy up some parts of her clothes that were not neatly dressed. Then, he paused for a moment and stretched out his hand to tie up some of her messy hair. Then, he took a hat and put it on her head. "Madam, later, try not to speak. If you have to speak, you must deliberately lower your voice and change your tone." Her hair had never been touched by other men. Gu Ningqing's cheeks became slightly hot. She thought to herself, "What am I thinking?" She hurriedly responded in a low voice. Song Qing-shu was also a little nervous. After all, he couldn't think of a plan in such a short time. Now, he could only take one step at a time. Seeing that the footsteps of the searching soldiers were getting closer and closer, a vigorous voice suddenly came from not far away. "In the past, I roamed the Jianghu for more than 30 years. I killed all the enemies and defeated all the heroes. There was no one in the world who could match up to me. Helpless, I could only live in seclusion in the deep valley and befriend eagles. Alas, I've been looking for a worthy opponent all my life, but I couldn't find one. It's really lonely and embarrassing." Chapter 2461. Hearing these words, Song Qing-shu's eyes widened. Others might not know what this meant, but how could he not know? In his previous life, Dugu Seeking for Loss was a legendary figure in the lower realm. In this world, he had personally seen the words he carved on the mountain wall in the Valley of Divine Eagles. The sword will in those words had benefited him greatly over the years. "Madam, you should be saved," Song Qing-shu said. Gu Ningqing murmured to herself. Could the legend be true? Being in Peerless City, she had naturally heard of the legend of the Dugu family. Previously, when Dugu Yifang died, Dugu Ming even went to the ancestral hall to burn incense and pray. At that time, she secretly despised this guy's actions. But now, it seemed that he really invited the ancestors. "Madam, stay here and don't move. I'll go out and take a look." After leaving Gu Ningqing, Song Qing-shu hurried out of the tent. he discovered that there was a man standing in the distance. He was not as old as he had imagined. Instead, he looked very young. His eyebrows were like swords, and his eyes were like stars. However, he was different from the usual milky white students. There was an indescribable confidence and calmness in his eyes, as if nothing in this world could stop him. His black cloak fluttered in the cold wind of the night, and he stood there like the sharpest sword. On the other side, Meng Qihong's pupils constricted slightly when he saw this. Dugu Qiubai, as an elder of the devil's sect, he had naturally heard of the legend of this person. I didn't expect that there would still be people in the Jianghu who remember me. The young man smiled, then his eyes fell on him. Was it you who killed Dugu Yifang? Song Qingshu was shocked. Dugu's seeking for loss should be over 100 years old. How could he be so young? However, he remembered that the old urchin Zhou Badong was not young either. As he grew older, many of his white hair turned black. It should be that his cultivation had reached a certain level. Coupled with his naive state of mind, he could return to his youth to a certain extent. There were also the people from the carefree sect. They were obviously 70 or 80 years old, but they all looked like little girls. This Dugu seeking for loss must have either cultivated a skill similar to the everlasting ageless art, or his martial power had reached an unimaginable level. It seemed like it was the latter. Meng Qihang was a great grandmaster after all, and he was also an overlord of the devil's sect, so he naturally had pride in his heart. When he heard Chu Yang's question, he replied coldly, "So what if I am?" Dugu seeking a loss sighed. "Originally, I did not intend to meddle in the affairs of the mortal world. However, I still have some unresolved ties with Peerless City. Since the son of an old friend was killed, I have to seek justice for him." Song Qingshu's heart was thumping wildly. The swordsmanship that Dugu Ming had used back in the Western Xia did indeed have the shadow of the Dugu seeking for defeat sword will. It was just that there was too much of a difference in their realms. Song Qingshu had his suspicions back then, and now he had finally confirmed them. Meng Qihang roared with laughter as well. "Open your eyes and take a look. This isn't your era anymore. Our Mongolian army has millions of soldiers, and we have countless experts under our command. How dare you come to our army camp alone? You overestimate yourself." Dugu seeking a loss glanced at him indifferently without getting angry. His voice was as calm as still water, as if he was talking about something that couldn't be more natural. "You attack first. Otherwise, you won't have the chance anymore." Meng Qihang was furious. How arrogant! Of course, he could order the Mongolian soldiers and warriors to attack first. First, he could test the opponent's cultivation, and second, he could exhaust his strength. But now, under the watchful eyes of so many people, he also wanted to save his face. Moreover, as a great grandmaster, cultivation was one thing, but cultivating one's mind was equally important. Which great grandmaster didn't have absolute confidence and vigor? How could they show weakness just because of a few words from the opponent? Then die. Meng Qihong's pupils shrank. His psychic power turned into a solid form, and 9 transparent wind blades suddenly appeared around Dugu, seeking a loss. The next moment, they shot toward his body, trying to turn him into a beehive. Earlier, when he was dealing with Dugu Yifang, a single wind blade had broken the opponent's unique skill, the invincible tyrannical hand, and reaped his life without losing any momentum. Now, he had condensed 9 wind blades at the same time, attacking from all directions at the same time. It was obvious that he didn't dare to underestimate his opponent. Just when the 9 wind blades were released, and the momentum was about to increase rapidly, the shadow of a sword seemed to appear above Dugu, seeking a loss's head. His body didn't move at all, but the sword shadow above his head had already spun out in advance, making an extremely sharp, air-piercing sound. When the 9 wind blades were at their weakest point, the sword's shadow shattered them into powder. Song Qingshu seemed to have realized something. He remembered that Dugu seeking a loss's sword art always focused on offense and never on defense. Every time, he would attack the enemy's weak point, and then, one move after another, he would drown the enemy in it. If someone could make him withdraw his sword and defend himself, he would be overjoyed for months. Sure enough, After Dugu seeking a loss's sword had dispersed the opponent's wind blades, he didn't give his opponent any time to breathe and instantly slashed towards Meng Qiang. Meng Qihong's expression changed drastically. He didn't expect that his attack would be neutralized by his opponent at the very beginning, and that the next attack would be so fast. However, he reacted quickly as well. After all, he only needed to use his psyche power, and a transparent light wall appeared in front of him. Previously, he had only relied on this light wall to let Dugu Yifeng bombard it with the invincible tyrannical hand countless times, and it didn't even budge a bit. But now, he had set up 3 of them. However, the previously indestructible light wall was instantly shattered into pieces by his opponent's sword, as if ice had met with fire. Then his opponent's sword didn't stop at all, and directly broke through the 3 light walls, and the last sword slashed toward his opponent's forehead. Meng Qihong's tall and big body stiffened, and he murmured in a very bitter tone, "Such an overbearing sword." Then, a line of blood spread out from his forehead, and his pupils lost their previous luster. His whole body swayed, and he fell down from the tower. He fell heavily on the ground, and didn't have any breath left. He died just like that. All the soldiers felt a chill run down their spines. Even Song Qingshu was no exception. Although Meng Qiang wasn't considered a strong person in the great Grandmaster realm, his method of turning his psyche power into an object was quite brilliant. Even if Song Qingshu was at his peak, it wouldn't be difficult to defeat him, but it would be very difficult to kill him in a one-on-one fight, not to mention ending his life in one move. That sword just now, if it were me, would I be able to take it? Song Qingshu only felt a little thirsty. Meng Qiang. Tai Muzhen had just rushed over after hearing the news. He saw Meng Qiang fighting with his opponent from afar, and he was about to come over to hold the line. He thought that with 2 against 1, and with his thousands of soldiers, his opponent would definitely die. Who would have thought that in the blink of an eye, Meng Qiang would actually die, and he was killed by his opponent in one move? He felt a chill run down his spine. Ever since he unified Mongolia, the word fear had never appeared in his dictionary again. But at this moment, he felt a deep fear. Are you the one who brought people to destroy Peerless City? Dugu, seeking for loss, shifted his gaze and looked at him quietly. Chapter 2462. Those who follow me will prosper, and those who oppose me will perish. Temujin had already calmed down after a brief moment of shock. He had seen all kinds of situations over the years, and there was no way he would show any fear in front of so many of his subordinates. Since Peerless City has chosen to surrender, I will naturally treat them well. If they choose to resist stubbornly, then don't blame me for being merciless. But in the end, you still killed Dugu Yifeng. Dugu's seeker of defeat looked at him indifferently. Temujin laughed heartily, his voice full of arrogance and heroism. So what? His stubbornness is his way of seeking death. In my opinion, this is also what you deserve, Dugu's seeker of defeat said. Right now, in my camp, who knows who will be the one to die? Temujin sneered. With a wave of his hand, the Mongolian soldiers who had not reacted earlier were now ready. They all knocked their arrows, and in an instant, a terrifying rain of arrows filled the sky. Dugu's seeker of defeat still did not move an inch. The shadow of the giant sword stood in front of him, and any arrows that got within 3 feet of him were either deflected or turned into dust. Song Qingshu was secretly impressed, but he knew very well that any master facing a rain of arrows like this would have a problem of endurance. After all, blocking so many arrows consumed a lot of internal energy. In the long run, the internal energy recovery rate would not be able to keep up with the consumption rate, and the master would definitely be exhausted to death. But the army was made up of people, not machines. They could not keep shooting arrows nonstop. If there was a slight moment of relaxation, the master would have a chance to escape. As expected, after 3 rounds of arrows, both the power and the number of arrows that were fired had decreased. Dugu's seeker of defeat moved. With one step, he appeared near the archers. With a wave of the giant sword in his hand, the group of archers was instantly routed. At this moment, another group of Mongolian soldiers moved. Each of them held a gun and fired at the figure. The barrel of the gun spat out countless sparks. Dugu, seeker of defeat, had obviously not seen this kind of weapon before, but his natural instinct as a master told him to give up on taking it head-on. Instead, he dodged to the side. At this moment, there was a loud bang. Song Qingshu swallowed his saliva. They had even taken out cannons. These were Gul'dan's troops that had surrendered previously. The Mongolians were indeed very efficient. In such a short time, they had already taken them in. Ordinary people might not be able to see the trajectory of the cannonball, but Dugu, seeking for loss, was not one of them. With a wave of his sleeve, he caught the cannonball with a gentle force and threw it back. Boom! The Mongolian artillery camp was instantly blasted into a bloody mess. The camels were frightened and ran away in panic. The camp was in chaos. Temujin knew that he could not continue like this. Just now, he had watched coldly from the sidelines, and he felt a little more confident, so he made his move. While Dugu, seeking for loss, was dealing with the cannonball, the sea of blood and countless white bones wrapped around him. The sea of blood was like a giant python that coiled around his body. The white bones and skulls in the sea of blood were like demons from hell, opening their mouths and trying to bite him. Everyone in the Mongolian camp cheered. But halfway through the cheers, the shadow of a giant sword suddenly swelled up and rushed out of the sea of blood. Countless sword auras spread out in all directions, smashing the sea of blood and white bones into pieces. Countless tents nearby were flipped over, and the Mongolian soldiers who did not manage to dodge in time exploded into clouds of blood mist. Temujin spat out a mouthful of blood. Due to the battle with Song Qingshu and the injuries caused by the Tongtian witch bomb in the shaman sect's secret tunnel, his strength had not fully recovered. Now that his sea of blood and bones had been destroyed by the enemy, his injuries were naturally not light. Dugu, seeking for loss, said coldly, "Who would have thought that there are still people who practice the kung fu of the heavenly demon? To create a sea of blood of this scale, who knows how many lives must have been slaughtered? Today, I will enforce justice on behalf of the heavens." As he finished speaking, he walked towards Temujin step by step. Although his steps looked slow, he covered a distance of several dozen feet in the blink of an eye. The Mongolians were shocked. Countless guards of the Great Khan rushed forward, and at the same time, many of the Mongolian experts, led by Ba Siba, also rushed forward. Ali Buj also asked the experts of the prince's mansion to help. But no one was a match for Dugu, seeking for loss. They all spat out blood and retreated. Only Ba Siba lasted a little longer. With the protection of the lotus seal and the counterattack of the god-vanquishing palm, he created a lot of trouble for the enemy. Although Dugu, seeking for loss, was strong, it was not easy for him to advance under the blockade of so many experts. Song Qingshu pretended to rush forward, but his eyes were on Temujin. He saw that Temujin had picked up the Sulu rod, but it was obvious that his cultivation level was much lower than usual. Should I gamble with him now? Song Qingshu was a little tempted. This was a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity. Damn it, let's shoot him. His eyes turned serious. Just as he was about to make his move, a clear voice suddenly rang out in the air. "Little Condor, you're messing around again." Song Qingshu was shocked. He looked at the green figure on the flagpole not far away in disbelief. How can it be her? Her green robe fluttered, making her look even more petite and delicate. The green bamboo stick in her hand was especially eye-catching. It was the mysterious sheep-raising girl, Ah Ching. Dugu, seeking for loss, sent the surrounding experts flying with one strike. When he saw Ah Ching, his calm face darkened. "Mysterious Lady of the Ninth Heaven. How many times have I told you not to call me by that name? Mysterious Lady of the Ninth Heaven?" Song Qingshu was surprised. He had indeed heard of such a legend in his previous life, but he was still shocked that Ah Ching was really the mysterious lady of the Ninth Heaven. "But your name is not as nice as Little Condor." Ah Ching suddenly looked around. "Hey, where's that silly condor next to you? Back then, you would come and pluck its feathers from time to time, so of course it ran away." Whenever Dugu, seeking for loss, talked about this past, he always felt like gnashing his teeth. "That's a pity. Calculating the time, its feathers should have recovered by now. Ah Ching said with some regret. Dugu's seeking for loss was speechless. He was too lazy to pay attention to this heartless, crazy woman and directly swung his sword at Temujin. He had not forgotten why he was here. Temujin held the tulu in his hand, surrounded by a sea of blood and bones. He looked at the giant sword coming at him, as if he was facing a great enemy. At this moment, a green sword aura swung over and pushed the giant sword to the side. Dugu's seeking for loss was furious. Mysterious lady of the ninth heaven, do you really want to go against me? At this moment, the originally innocent Ah Ching's eyes suddenly became cold and dignified. Dugu's seeking for loss, you should have broken through the void a long time ago and left this world. You shouldn't meddle in the affairs of the world. Song Ching Shu looked at the green-clothed girl on the flagpole in bewilderment. Was this still the innocent sheep-raising girl who called him Big Brother in his impression? At this moment, she was holy and dignified, as if all living things in the world were nothing but ants in her eyes. Dugu's seeking for loss frowned. I'll leave after I kill this guy. Ah Ching shook her head. He has great luck protecting him. He should be the emperor of this world. You can't kill him. Chapter 2463. He has mastered the kung fu of the heavenly demon and has killed countless people. Dugu's seeking Allah said in a low voice. Millions of corpses and rivers of blood, and you still want to protect him? Heaven and earth are heartless and view all living things as dogs. You should understand this. Ah Ching replied indifferently. Dugu's seeking Allah laughed so loudly that it shook the entire camp. I don't understand your great principles, but the sword in my hand is my principle. With that, the huge sword above his head slashed towards Temujin. Ah Ching was already prepared, and a huge green sword aura met the attack. Song Ching Shu couldn't help but think of the Joe from his previous life, where someone pulled out a 40-meter-long sword. These two guys in front of him were exactly like that, using swords as knives. After a loud bang, many soldiers who didn't retreat in time were blasted into a mist of blood. Even those who were prepared and held their shields in front of them were seriously injured. Fall back, Temujin ordered. He knew that these two guys were not human, and watching from the sidelines would only bring disaster to the fish in the moat. He wasn't afraid, but the soldiers under him couldn't. The Mongolian soldiers retreated as if they had been pardoned, leaving a huge, empty space in the middle of the camp. But Ah Ching and Dugu seeking a loss had already fought far away, and only the green figure and the huge black sword could be seen in the air. The sound of the two fighting was like thunder from the sky, like thunder from the heavens. The momentum made everyone who was far away tremble in fear, and they all looked at each other in horror. Song Ching Shu silently gazed into the distance, thinking that Ah Ching hadn't used her full strength during the golden snake meet. However, he immediately recalled that Ah Ching was different from this cold and indifferent woman who looked like a high and mighty deity. Could it be that the mysterious fairy of the ninth heaven that Dugu seeking a loss mentioned was sealed inside Ah Ching's body, and she usually walked the world as Ah Ching and would only awaken the mysterious fairy of the ninth heaven at special times? Just now, when a mysterious fairy of the ninth heaven mentioned that Temujin was destined to be the Run Huang of this world, she jumped out to stop Dugu seeking a loss when he wanted to kill him. And then when he wanted to deal with Temujin the next day, the mysterious fairy of the ninth heaven came out to mess things up. He felt a wave of irritation in his heart. Originally, everything was going according to plan, but now there was a huge variable in the plan, and he still didn't know how to solve it. At this moment, an ethereal voice came from the sky. Dugu Chobai, your time is up. Hurry up and go. Song Ching Shu followed the sound and saw Ah Ching floating in midair. Ah Ching did not continue to attack, but was staring coldly at Dugu seeking a loss. Dugu seeking a loss also stood between heaven and earth. His entire body started to flicker, as if the will of heaven and earth could no longer contain his existence. Is this what it means to break through the void? Dugu seeking a loss looked at his disappearing body with a complicated look in his eyes. In the end, he looked at this familiar world with nostalgia, and his whole body turned into a shadow and ascended into the sky. All the Mongolian soldiers turned pale, and some even trembled in fear. Their horses whinnied and stood on their hind legs. Looking at the scene in front of them, they all knelt down and kowtowed. Temujin also looked at the scene with a face full of fanaticism. From the time of Qin Shi Huang until now, every emperor had longed for immortality. But the idea of immortality was just an illusion, and no emperor had ever achieved it. Today, however, he seemed to have seen the possibility of immortality with his own eyes, and he wondered if he could achieve it one day. At his current age, he was already an old man in the eyes of the world. No matter how high his martial arts level was, it would only prolong his life, and he would still die eventually. But if he could ascend, then the thing that he had been worrying about all these years would be solved. Compared to Temujin's fanaticism, Song Qingshu was quite calm. So what if he ascended? He would still have to start as a small soldier in the immortal world, staying in this beautiful world and enjoying the prosperity of the world, and having the company of his female friends was pretty good. In the immortal world, there would be all sorts of loneliness and coldness. The legend of Chang Yi in the Moon Palace was well known. Oh, there's Chang Yi in the sky. Song Qingshu's originally firm heart suddenly wavered. Temujin, treat the people of Peerless City well, or I will take your life even if I have to split open the gate of heaven. Dugu, seeker of defeat, left his last words and disappeared from the world. Temujin swallowed hard. Could it be that he had forced the Lady of Two Paths to attract this devil? After tonight's incident, Meng Qihang died, the Mongolian army suffered heavy losses, and he himself almost lost his life. He had long since thrown that thought to the kingdom of Java, thinking that this woman was inauspicious and should not be touched in the future. Song Qingshu, on the other hand, looked everywhere for Ah Qing, but she was nowhere to be found. She must have left quietly when Dugu's seeker of defeat broke through the void. I wonder if she still remembers me. Song Qingshu let out a long sigh. At this time, on the other side, Ba Siba took the lead and knelt down at Temujin. The emperor appointed by the immortals, the great Khan, is destined to unify the world. Long live the Khan! Temujin was surprised at first, then secretly praised him for his brilliance. With Ba Siba taking the lead, the others all knelt down to worship him. Morale, which had been somewhat scattered after the heavy losses tonight, was restored to its peak, and his reputation had also reached an unprecedented height. Naturally, Song Qingshu was too lazy to worship him. Taking advantage of the crowd, he sneaked back to his own camp. Gu Ningxing was hiding behind the curtain, peeking at him. She did not expect him to suddenly come in and ran right into him. Feeling an elastic body, Song Qingshu hurriedly held her up. "Madam, are you all right?" Gu Ningxing shook her head slightly. "I'm fine. Was that really Dugu's seeker of defeat? How could he be so young?" That's right. Others might not be sure, but he had seen Dugu's seeker of defeat's sword. So how could he not recognize it? "Madam, you don't have to worry. After this incident, I'm sure Temujin will not dare to have any evil intentions towards you." He hadn't expected that his carelessly thought-up method would actually draw out Dugu Qiubai. In any case, only Meng Qihang had seen his disguise as Dugu Qiubai, and Meng Qihang was already dead. So, he naturally didn't know that two different Dugu Qiubai had appeared today. "This is all thanks to you." Gu Ningxing blushed at the thought of the situation at that time. If the real Dugu seeker of defeat had appeared a little too late, by the time he came to save her, her body would have already been taken by Temujin. Moreover, it seemed that he was here to avenge Dugu Yifeng, not to save her. But after the disturbance caused by Song Qingshu, Temujin had the misconception that all of this had something to do with her. This way, her safety could really be guaranteed in the future. But tonight's situation is still unclear, so you shouldn't go back for now. Come back tomorrow in front of everyone and claim that it was Dugu's seeker of defeat who saved you. He can't jump down to prove it anyway. Song Qingshu pointed to the sky. Gu Ningxing could not help but smile. "You're so naughty." As soon as she finished speaking, she felt that it was a bit inappropriate. It sounded too much like flirting. Song Qing-shu did not notice, but pointed to the bed. Madam, you've suffered a shock tonight. You should rest early. What about you? Gu Ningxing could not help but ask. Song Qing-shu pointed to the cushion beside him. I'll meditate for one night. How can you do that? I heard that you seem to be injured. How can you not rest well? Gu Ningxing said hurriedly. You sleep on the bed. Song Qing-shu was surprised. We sleep together? That's not very good, is it? Gu Ningxing's face immediately turned red. She glared at him coquettishly. I said you sleep on the bed, and I'll make do on the cushion. What are you thinking? Only then did Song Qing-shu realize that he had misunderstood. He laughed awkwardly. Before he could think of a way to resolve the awkwardness, Gu Zixian's low voice came from outside the door. Big brother Song, big brother Song. Chapter 2464. Outside the tent, Gu Zixian's dress fluttered in the wind, and her figure looked even more charming under the moonlight. Song Qing-shu hurriedly pulled her in. Granted, don't call me by my name in the future, or else you'll be exposed. Gu Zixian stuck out her tongue. I was just in a hurry, I didn't think too much. She thought to herself, should I call him Master Shueiyue? It feels weird. What's so urgent? Song Qing-shu asked as he made sure there was no one else outside the tent. It's mainly about my mother. My mother has always kept herself clean and kept her chastity for my father, but tonight she was summoned by Temujin. I really don't know what to do. Gu Zixian's delicate brows were full of worry. At this time, a light snort came from inside the tent. I'm not keeping my chastity for your father. I just don't want to come in contact with those stinky men. Gu Zixian's whole body trembled, and she hurriedly looked towards the source of the sound. When she saw Gu Ningxing, her face was full of excitement. Why are you here? Gu Ningxing spat. Do you want me to be in Temujin's tent? Of course not. Gu Zixian noticed that she had already changed her clothes, and couldn't help but look back and forth between the two. You guys, what are you thinking about? He was the one who rescued me and temporarily placed me here. Gu Ningxing's face reddened as she jokingly scolded her. Gu Zixian stuck out her tongue. I didn't say anything. You were the one who misunderstood. Seeing that the two seemed to be trying to hide something, Song Qing-shu couldn't help but cough and quickly explain what had happened today. Gu Zixian ran over to hold his hand, and her face pressed tightly against his shoulder. I didn't expect Big Brother Song to hit the jackpot and actually draw out the real Dugat Shobai. This way, Temujin won't dare to have any evil thoughts towards Mother anymore. The young girl's body was delicate and youthful, and Song Qing-shu couldn't help but secretly praise. Not bad, but it's best if you don't show yourself tonight. Tomorrow, when there are more people, you can come back and borrow Dugat Shobai's power. Gu Zixian pursed her lips and smiled. In the end, Big Brother Song, you just want Mother to stay in your tent for the night, right? Song Qing-shu was startled and hurriedly said, Don't talk nonsense like that. Gu Ningxing's face was also pale. She glared at her daughter. What are you talking about? Gu Zixian curled her lips. I'm just joking. What are you guys so nervous about? As he spoke, he hugged the man of his dreams tightly. Brother Song, I've missed you so much. Seeing that she really didn't mean anything, he let out a sigh of relief and responded by hugging her in his arms. Gu Zixian's body was tall and slender, filled with the aura of a young girl. Hugging her was extremely comfortable. Ahem, Gu Ningxing couldn't stand it anymore. There are people here. Gu Zixian's face turned red, and she hurriedly pushed her lover away. Then I'll leave first to avoid attracting attention. Take good care of my mother for me. Song Qing-shu smiled. Of course. Gu Zixian jogged away as if she was escaping. Only Song Qing-shu and Gu Ningxing were left in the tent. The awkward silence was restored. This couldn't go on. Song Qing-shu coughed and said, Madam, you can sleep on the bed. Don't worry about me. I have a place to sleep. As he spoke, he found a rope and tied it to the two ends of the tent. Then, he turned over and slept on the rope. Gu Ningxing's eyes widened. You can sleep on a rope? Yes, a friend taught me. The image of Xiao Long Nu's pale, but beautiful face appeared in Song Qing-shu's mind. He didn't know where she was right now. Aren't you afraid of falling? Gu Ningxing blinked. Her big eyes were full of surprise. Song Qing-shu replied, "As long as you don't have any evil thoughts in your heart, you won't." Then, the tent became quiet again. The two of them went asleep with their own thoughts. In the middle of the night, there was a sudden thump. Guningqing jumped in fright. She propped herself up from the bed and looked at Song Qing-shu, who was covered in dirt. "How are you?" Song Qing-shu blushed. "I'm fine. My skin is rough and my flesh is thick." Seeing that he only had a scratch, Guningqing relaxed. She couldn't help but smile. "You said before that you won't fall if you don't have evil thoughts in your heart. Are you having evil thoughts now?" As soon as she said this, she regretted it. It felt like she was teasing him. Song Qing-shu was also startled. He smiled and climbed up the rope again. After a while, he asked, "Madam, you don't seem to be much older than me." "Yes." Guningqing was only in her 30s. The two of them were about the same age. In fact, Gu Zixian was a year younger than him. "Then do you feel like a cabbage that you've painstakingly raised has been eaten by a pig? How can you describe yourself as a pig?" On the eve of dawn the next day, Song Qing-shu quietly left the camp with Guningqing. According to the plan, she would return early in the morning in front of everyone. That way, Temujin wouldn't dare to have any more ideas about her. The eve of dawn was the time when people were in the deepest sleep and the chances of being discovered were the lowest. Not long after he returned to the camp, a soldier came to report that Temujin had summoned him. He couldn't help but be surprised. Why did it have to be so early? When he arrived at the king's tent, he found that there were many generals and experts present, all of whom were Temujin's trusted aides. Seeing that everyone had arrived, Temujin opened his mouth and said, "I have good news to tell everyone. When we attacked Galdan, I knew that the Mutran tribe would definitely hear about it and come to our rescue. So I sent Borutai to lead a group of people and set up an ambush on the path they would definitely pass through. In addition, we defeated Galdan in one battle yesterday, so I sent another group of people to support them. They just happened to block the reinforcements led by Hua Qingtong and completely annihilated them. The only regret is that Hua Qingtong ran away, but there are already many people out to capture her, so she probably won't be able to escape. That B***TCH in yellow has injured many of my Mongolian soldiers over the years, but I heard that she's not bad, so I decided to show her some mercy and let her become my servant girl. Aha. Borutai was the son of Bogorchuk, a person of high status and great trust. Hearing about this great victory, the generals in the tent all congratulated Temujin for his wisdom and bravery. Song Qing-shu, on the other hand, was secretly shocked. Unfortunately, his position was too low before, and he didn't know about these military affairs, so he couldn't warn Hua Qingtong in advance. This time, the Mutran tribe was probably in trouble. As expected, Temujin sat up straight. "Before, I allowed the Mutran tribe to jump around, mainly because I was afraid of the mysterious sword immortal of Kunlun Mountain. But when she appeared yesterday, it was obvious that she supported me. That group of people can't be left alive, so I've decided to take this opportunity to completely pacify the western region. Yesterday, they had been recognized as emperor by that fairy-like figure, so the morale of the Mongolian soldiers was at an all-time high. Now that they heard that they could fight another war, their eyes lit up with excitement. War meant money and women, and who wouldn't like that? Only then did Temujin look at Song Qing-shu. "Shuewa sect, I'll send you ahead to the Mutran tribe to steal the Treaty of Alliance from the 36 tribes of Tian Shan and completely disrupt their alliance. Then, when our army arrives, we'll wipe out all those who don't submit." Chapter 2465. Temujin then said to Ba-Siba, Imperial Preceptor, "Take a team of 10,000 people to Guangming Peak to destroy the remnants of the Ming dynasty." During this time, Zhang Wuji has been missing. Even though Yang Shao announced that he was in seclusion, no one is a fool. The people of the Ming dynasty are already in a state of panic. Yang Shao is old and unvirtuous, so he cannot convince the people. Now that the Ming dynasty is divided, and with the Imperial Preceptor leading the team, they will be destroyed without a doubt. "I will not disappoint you." Ba-Siba bowed and accepted the mission. Song Qingshu frowned. The Ming dynasty was full of factions and had been in a state of internal strife for many years. It was only with the appearance of Zhang Wuji that the Ming dynasty was able to unite. Zhang Wuji was able to smoothly become the leader of the Ming dynasty not because of his martial arts, but because he represented the interests of every faction in the Ming dynasty. Golden Fur Lion King was his adoptive father, and the White-Browed Eagle King was his grandfather. Yang Shao owed him a huge favor when he escorted Yang Buhui back then, and he also saved the people of the Five Elements banners from Miju. It could be said that every faction in the Ming dynasty was either his relative or had received a great favor from him, which was why they were willing to recognize him as the leader. Now that Zhang Wuji was missing, the conflicts that he had previously suppressed were completely triggered, and the Ming dynasty returned to its previous state of disunity. Song Qingshu couldn't help but feel a headache coming on. What was the revered Ming planning? From the looks of it, was he planning to give up on the Ming dynasty? But he had been seriously injured in the last war and probably wouldn't be able to recover even after a few years. Thinking back to the days when he had been pretending to be a Tongtian shaman, Song Qingshu fell into deep thought. Could it be that he was also planning to steal the fruits of the war from the Mongols? No matter what the situation was, it seemed that the Ming dynasty could not be saved. Previously, it was Galdan, Wood Table Luan tribe, and the Ming dynasty in the western regions. This time, Temujin had come out in full force and destroyed Galdan and defeated Wood Table Luan tribe. The momentum of unifying the western regions was unstoppable. At first, Song Qingshu was wondering if he should inform the Ming dynasty secretly. However, after some thought, he decided not to do so. If even revered Ming himself was not going to care, then the Ming dynasty could only pray for their own good fortune. His biggest headache right now was figuring out how to deal with the Wood Table Lun tribe. Temujin had sent him alone, which clearly meant that he valued his martial arts skills. He was going to steal the Treaty of Alliance from the 36 tribes of Tian Shan and destroy the alliance between the tribes. Then, he would lead his army to take them down one by one. How can we preserve the power of the Wooden Table Luan tribe as much as possible? Even when Song Qingshu came out of the tent, he still could not think of any good ideas. After all, the Wooden Table Luan tribe was different from Peerless City. Over the years, under the leadership of Hua Qingtong, they had killed countless Mongolian soldiers, especially at Gaochang not long ago. Protecting them would be very difficult. In the distance, there was a commotion in the camp. It turned out that Gu Ningxing had returned. Many people had heard about Duga's seeking loss rescuing her last night, so when they looked at her, there was a sense of shock mixed with a lot of fear. Even Temujin had a lingering fear of what happened last night, so he took the opportunity to give her a lot of titles. Song Qingshu remembered one of them, Lady Chastity. TSK, 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 this guy couldn't have her, so he put her on a pedestal so that no one else could have her. As Song Qingshu's imagination ran wild, Dan Yuru had already lifted the curtain and entered his tent. Young master, I heard that you're going to the Wood Table Luan tribe. I have some things to say to you. Oh, please speak. Song Qingshu invited her to sit down. Dan Yuru said, Young master, are you thinking about how to save the Wood Table Luan tribe? Song Qingshu nodded. That's right. Does Cult Master have any good ideas? Dan Yuru shook her head. No, and I also want to persuade young master to give up on this idea. Song Qingshu could tell that there was a hidden meaning in her words. He couldn't help but ask curiously why. Dan Yuru explained, although the Wood Table Luan tribe's Hua Qingtong is the most famous, it is mainly led by two brothers, Muzwolen. The elder brother is Podu, and the younger brother is Muzwolen. One occupies Kashgar, while the other occupies Yarkand. Together, they rule the southern frontier. However, in recent years, Hua Qingtong has been in the limelight so much that people only know about Muzwolen and not Podu. Podu has long been dissatisfied with this. The Mongolians are keenly aware of the rift between them, so they have long started to make arrangements. I have a female disciple called by Fanghua. She is beautiful and has almost mastered the art of seduction. She was sent to get close to Podu before, Now, Pota listens to her. We can only send a message here, and she will take action. She is just one of the many people that have been sent there. For example, I know that Brother Aliber has also set up a few spies there, but I don't know what they are. I have said so much to tell young master that the Wood Table Lewin tribe is doomed. The reason why it could survive for so long was that the Khan was afraid of the mysterious Sword Immortal in Kunlun Mountain. Now that this is gone, all the previous arrangements are beginning to close the net. So, young master, please don't take any risks. Song Qingshu's expression changed slightly. He didn't expect that the Mongolians had been making arrangements in the western region for so many years. At first, he was wondering why the Mongolians would tolerate the few separatist forces in the western region. If it wasn't for Cult Master's reminder, I'm afraid I would have really caused a lot of trouble this time. Song Qingshu said with emotion. Dan Yuru was a little apologetic. It's a pity that I didn't get to know young master earlier. Otherwise, I wouldn't be afraid of Fong going there. Song Qingshu shook his head. It's none of your business. Even if you didn't send someone, the Mongolians would have sent someone else. Dan Yuru was relieved. She directly leaned on his shoulder and whispered in his ear, My female disciple is beautiful and has learned the art of seducing men. If you like her, you can let her serve you in bed. Just tell her that I said it. Song Qingshu rolled his eyes. Am I that lecherous? Dan Yuru smiled sweetly and sat in his arms. She gently put her arms around his neck and said with an inexplicable charm, If young master is interested, we can serve you together in the future. Song Qingshu's face heated up. You demons of the demonic sect really have no scruples when talking. Dan Yuru twisted her body slightly. Hee, young master, although you say you don't want it, your body is quite honest. Song Qingshu spent a lot of effort to get off her. After all, he had important matters to attend to and really didn't have the time to fool around. He then quietly went to the dual cultivator residence and said goodbye to Gu Zixian and the others. Then he embarked on his journey to the Wooden Table Ethics Department. Song Qingshu went all the way south and found the Mongolian soldiers cleaning up the battlefield near the Anjihai Grand Canyon. Obviously, the Mongolian army had ambushed the reinforcements brought by Hua Qingtong here. Logically, a famous general like Hua Qingtong wouldn't make such a mistake. It was just that she was eager to save people and didn't expect that the always powerful Galdan would be defeated in a day. Then, the Mongolian army took out their forces to ambush her. All these factors combined led to this terrible defeat. I don't know if she escaped or not. Looking at the broken limbs on the battlefield, Song Qingshu could imagine how tragic the battle was. He continued to go south with a solemn expression. He asked the local Mongolian soldiers and heard that Hua Qingtong ran into the mountains. Many experts led troops to chase after her, so he also rushed in that direction. Although he knew that the probability of meeting Hua Qingtong was very low, he still didn't want to do nothing. Chapter 2466. After walking for an unknown period of time, he felt that the mountain walls on both sides were tall and straight, as if they were carved by a knife. Looking up at the sky, he felt that the sky was blue and bright, as if he was looking up from the bottom of the sea. The surrounding rocks were all dark black and shone with a dark light. The road twisted and turned, becoming steeper and steeper. Song Qingshu had no choice but to release the horses and camels he brought with him. He could only wait to cross the mountain and buy new ones from the local herdsmen. At the same time, he sighed. The famous and dangerous Duko Highway in the future was almost in this direction. With the technological conditions of the future, tens of thousands of soldiers fought for 10 years and sacrificed hundreds of people before it was built. It could be imagined how dangerous and difficult this route was in this era. The reason why he gave up the main road and took these small paths was that he saw some scattered footprints along the way. In his opinion, there were few people in the vast mountains, and no one would pass by on a normal day. These footprints were most likely left by the Mongolian warriors who were chasing after Hua Qingtong. He could not help but worry secretly. Calculating the time, he was 1 or 2 days late. He did not know if Hua Qingtong had escaped or been caught. Along the way, he used his Qing Gong to flip through the mountains and fields. His speed was much faster than when he brought the camels and horses. After searching for another 10 miles, he suddenly could not find any more traces. Song Qingshu was silent for a long time. Finally, he leaped onto a high rock, exhaled his dantian, and used the sound transmission and soul-searching technique to spread the sound waves. Miss, what were you? Although the sound transmission and soul-searching technique he learned from Li Qiushui was magical, there were echoes everywhere in the vast mountains. Naturally, the effect was greatly reduced. Even if it was not affected, the range of the search was no different from finding a needle in a haystack compared to the vast heavenly mountain. However, now that he had lost the direction, he could only try. He used the sound transmission and soul-searching technique at intervals. Finally, after a while, he suddenly heard the sound of fighting coming from afar. His figure flashed, and he rushed in that direction. In a valley several miles away, a yellow-robed woman was leaning against a rock, holding a long sword in her hand as she vigilantly looked at the 4 men around her. She said in a cold voice, "I advise you to leave as soon as possible. When my companions come, you won't be able to run even if you want to." She was naturally Hu Qingtong. However, she was different from the valiant and heroic yellow-robed girl in the past. The green feather on her head had already fallen somewhere, and her dress was a little tattered. It could be seen that she had been scratched by tree branches and rocks while fleeing in the mountains. What was more eye-catching was the bloody wound on her chest. Blood could be seen with the naked eye, and it was obvious that she was seriously injured. The 4 burly men looked at each other. One of them could not help but say, "Big brother, that person's inner force could spread so far. I'm afraid we can't deal with him. Why don't we retreat first?" The man who was called Big Brother was holding a one-legged bronze statue in his hand. Upon hearing this, he said angrily, "T. We've worked so hard to chase after her for so long and finally stopped her. Are we going to retreat just like that?" Another thin and tall man holding a steel fork hurriedly echoed, "That's right. You should know that the Great Khan has put a bounty on this woman's head all these years. 10,000 taels of gold and the title of 1,000 households are at our fingertips. How can we give up just like that?" As he spoke, he looked at the woman in front of him with a pair of extremely lustful eyes. "You don't say. This woman is really pretty. Why don't we capture her and rape her first before killing her? Anyway, the Great Khan didn't say that we have to keep her alive." "Gu Jinbiao, you shameless bastard." Hu Qingtong's eyes were about to spit fire. She subconsciously wanted to rush over, but she was affected by the injury on her chest and had no choice but to stop. The 3rd man snorted coldly. "Hu Qingtong, when you killed our 5th and 6th brothers, did you ever think that this day would come?" It turned out that these people were nicknamed the 6 Devils of Guangdong. The first devil, Tung Alei, was extremely strong and was good at using one-legged bronze statues. He was originally a tyrant in Liaodong with a family fortune of tens of thousands. He owned many ginseng fields, farms, and gold mines. Later, he was recruited by the Mongols and brought his brothers to seek refuge with the Mongols. The second devil, Gu Jinbiao, was a famous horse bandit. He was good at using steel forks and flying pitchforks. He was like a demon and was usually elusive. He was extremely lecherous and had the worst character among the 6 devils. The 3rd devil, Jiao Wenqi, was a disciple of the Han family's iron pipa players. He was good at using iron pipa players and pipa nails. The 4th devil, Ha Hatai, was a Mongolian and an expert wrestler. He played the key role in the brothers seeking refuge with the Mongols. The 5th devil, Yin Shikuei, and the 6th devil, Yin Shizhong, were Yin Shikuei's blood brothers. Both of them were good at using the 5 forms wheel. Years ago, they stole the Quran of the Mu Zhuluan tribe and died under the sword of the Halcyon Feather, Hu Qingtong. So this time, they came for the reward from the Mongols and also to avenge their brother. The great devil Tung Alei said, "Her blood is almost gone. Let's attack together and finish this quickly. This mountain is so big. That person won't be able to find us in a short time." After saying that, he waved the one-legged bronze statue and rushed forward. The other devils also rushed forward together. Hua Qingtong's eyes were already blurred. After fighting for so many days, her guards had died one by one. She did not know how many Mongolian pursuers she had killed, but in the end, these 4 guys still caught up. Originally, she saw that it was impossible to escape and was ready to kill herself while she still had the strength to avoid being violated by the perverted Gu Jinbiao. But when she heard that person's voice in the air, she suddenly felt reluctant to die. Biting her lips, she gathered the last of her strength and rushed forward. She only had one thought, which was to hold on no matter what. As long as that person came, she would be saved. Unfortunately, she was too heavily injured and lost too much blood. She was already at the end of her life. The other party wanted to finish this quickly, so they did not have the leisurely feeling of a cat chasing a mouse. Instead, they all used their full strength. Bang! The long sword in Hua Qingtong's hand was slightly cut by Tung Ilei's one-horned bronze statue. Then, Ha Hitai grabbed her and threw her to the ground. Hua Qingtong was already heavily injured, and this time, she almost lost her breath. The last of her strength immediately disappeared. Gu Jinbiao's eyes lit up as he rushed forward and began to tear her dress. Hua Qingtong turned pale with fright. Now, she did not have any strength to resist. She could not even bite her tongue to commit suicide. Fortunately, Tung Ilei lifted Gu Jinbiao up and slapped him on the back of the head. Damn it, you want sex more than your life. Let's leave this place first. When we find a safe place, we can slowly enjoy her. The mysterious person's telepathic message just now was like a shadow pressing on his heart. The others nodded in agreement. Even though Gu Jinbiao could not resist it, he could only temporarily suppress it. Tung Ilei was worried that his second brother would act recklessly, so he asked Ha Hitai to carry Hua Qingtong and leave. However, they didn't walk for long before they suddenly stopped. That was because a figure was blocking their way. Where are you going? Song Qingshu glanced at Hua Qingtong and secretly heaved a sigh of relief. Fortunately, although she was seriously injured, she was not dead. The 6 devils of Guangdong were originally on guard, but when they saw him clearly, they all heaved a sigh of relief. So it's Lord Shuiwei. Shuiwei was a guest of the Great Khan's tent, so they had seen her from afar before. Now that Lord Shuiwei is here, there's nothing to be afraid of. Did you hear someone's telepathic message just now? This person's inner strength is extremely high, but with Lord Shuiwei here, I think that person is no match for him. Song Qingshu said lightly, "What if I tell you that the person who transmitted the voice just now was me?" The 6 devils of Guangdong were stunned at first, then their expressions changed. They all wanted to take out their weapons, but a figure flashed in front of them, and they all fell heavily to the ground. Song Qingshu caught Hua Qingtong, who had fallen, and asked hurriedly, "Are you okay?" Unexpectedly, Hua Qingtong raised her hand and gave him a slap. There was a hint of sobbing in her voice. "Why are you so late?" Chapter 2467. Hua Qingtong fainted after the beating, causing Song Qingshu to be dumbfounded. Did this woman do it on purpose? He reached out to check her pulse. It was already faintly discernible. Only then did he know that she was indeed seriously injured. He hurriedly carried her away. He heard from Mongolian soldiers that many people had entered the mountains to search for Hua Qingtong. The 6 devils of Guangdong must be one of them. If other Mongolian warriors came, although he was not afraid, he was afraid of trouble. He first gave her a 9 turns bear snake pill to protect her vitality. Then, he carried her all the way through the mountains and finally found a cave a few miles away. Song Qingshu then placed her inside and began to channel his energy to heal her. About an hour later, Hua Qingtong woke up. Seeing the unfamiliar environment, she was confused at first. Then, she suddenly remembered something and hurriedly lowered her head to check her clothes. Seeing that her clothes were intact, she let out a sigh of relief. At this time, a faint voice came from behind her. "Am I so unbearable in your heart?" She shuddered and hurriedly turned around. She found that Song Qingshu was channeling his energy to heal her behind her. He had already taken off the water moon sect mask. After all, it was not so comfortable to wear a layer. It's really you? Hua Qingtong was in disbelief. Song Qingshu smiled. Why? Miss Hua doesn't want to see me? No. Hua Qingtong bit her lip and did not know how to explain for a moment. Thinking of what she said just now, she hurriedly said, I was not guarding against you just now. I was not very clear-headed and thought that I had fallen into Gu Jinbiao's hands. Song Qingshu helped her lean against the stone wall and sat down opposite her. Then can I take it that you don't mind what I do if you fall in my hands? You are always so flippant. Hua Qingtong glanced at him faintly. For the first time, she was not angry. Then let's talk about something serious. Song Qingshu stopped smiling and pointed at her bloody lapel. Just now, I hit your acupoints to stop the bleeding, but you should know that if you keep hitting acupoints, your muscles will die, so you need to bandage the wound. Now that you're awake, I want to ask for your opinion. Do you agree with me treating your wound? Hua Qingtong was finally a little annoyed. Then you could have handled it for me when I was unconscious just now. Why do you have to ask me now? Song Qingshu spread his hands with an innocent look on his face. Your wound is quite sensitive. I'm worried that if I do it for you while you're unconscious, you'll think that I'm taking advantage of you and slap me when you wake up. Hua Qingtong blushed and said apologetically, I'm sorry. I was too worried just now because I heard your voice and you didn't show up. I was worried that I would be humiliated by the 6 devils of Guangdong. So at that time, all right. Song Qingshu also looked depressed. I've never been hit by a woman like this in my life. Tell me, how are you going to compensate me? Why don't you slap me too? Hua Qingtong raised her head after saying that. Her eyelashes trembled slightly with her closed eyes, as if she was waiting for the execution. Song Qingshu waved his hand. Forget it. I'm afraid that I'll slap you to death with your current appearance. Even if I slap you, I won't be able to undo the slap. It's not worth it. Then what do you want? Hua Qingtong opened her eyes and looked at him. I haven't thought about it yet. I'll tell you when I've thought about it. Song Qingshu pointed at the wound on her chest that was starting to bleed again. Hurry up and decide. If you continue to bleed, you'll really die. Hua Qingtong's expression changed. After a long time, she said in a barely audible voice, Okay, what? I didn't hear you clearly. Song Qingshu moved his ear closer. Hua Qingtong felt her teeth itch. This guy was really too annoying. He could have treated the wound when she was unconscious. That way, no one would have been embarrassed. However, he had to wait until she woke up before asking. How was she supposed to answer him? Could it be that she didn't mind him looking at her chest? Hua Qingtong took a deep breath and suppressed the urge to bite him. She said in a low voice, Help me treat the wound. You won't hit me again after I'm done, right? Song Qingshu confirmed again. Hua Qingtong's teeth chattered. If you continue to say that, I can't help but want to hit you now. Song Qingshu laughed. He knew that it was about time. So he stopped teasing her and began to treat her wound with a serious expression. He slowly untied her clothes and found that her inner clothes had long been soaked in blood and stuck tightly to the wound. If he tore it, it would easily affect the wound. Therefore, he said in a low voice, Don't move. Then, a trace of sword aura seeped out from his fingertips. He slowly cut open her clothes and removed the bloody clothes that stuck to her skin piece by piece. Song Qingshu couldn't help but sigh. Miss Hua, you are really a heroine. You were able to escape the Mongolians' pursuit after suffering such a serious injury. Hua Qingtong's eyes turned red. Compared to my tribesmen who died in battle, my injury is nothing. Song Qingshu cleaned her wound and said apologetically, I'm really sorry that I didn't inform you in time. Hua Qingtong shook her head. It's not your fault. You didn't know our marching route. Moreover, I didn't expect Galdan to be defeated so quickly and let the Mongolians ambush us. Song Qingshu applied medicine on her wound and felt her body tremble. It was obvious that she was in pain. The Mongolians are going to attack the Muzwolen tribe next. They're going to unify the western region. What are your plans? Hua Qingtong smiled sadly. What else can I do? The tribe is the place where I was born and raised. I grew up on this land. Naturally, I have to live and die with it. Song Qingshu was silent. There were some things that were useless to say now. It was better not to say them. Feeling his fingers touch the skin near her wound, Hu Qingtong's face turned red. She also wanted to find a topic to change the topic. "Where are you going this time?" Song Qingshu replied. "Temujin sent me to your place to steal the letter of alliance from the 36 tribes. On the way, I found out that the Mongolians were searching for you, so I came to try my luck. I didn't have much hope, but I really found you. Don't you think we are fated?" Hu Qingtong pursed her lips and smiled. "We are indeed fated." This time, it was Song Qingshu's turn to be stunned. Logically speaking, shouldn't she be scolding him for not being serious again? Hu Qingtong suddenly bit her lip and reminded him in a small voice, "The wound is not there." Song Qingshu's face heated up. "Sorry, I was distracted just now." Hu Qingtong nodded, indicating that she did not blame him. "Are you really going to steal the letter of alliance from the 36 tribes this time? I'll see how it goes. Actually, it's useless for me to just give up on this journey. The Mongolians have been plotting against your tribe for a long time. This time, they are determined to succeed." Song Qingshu shared the information he knew with her. Of course, he was vague about the matter of Dan Ruyu's female disciple. Dan Yuru did not hide anything from him. If he sold her for another woman, that would be too much of a scumbag. Hu Qingtong's face also flashed with unprecedented confusion and helplessness. "Is our tribe doomed?" Song Qingshu helped her bandage her wound and comforted her. "Things aren't that bad yet. You should recover first before we talk." "I really have to thank you this time, Brother Song," Hu Qingtong said in a small voice. Seeing that she had unknowingly changed the way she addressed him, a smile appeared on Song Qingshu's face. "You're too weak now. Eat something, drink some water, and then have a good rest." "Okay." Hu Qingtong took the dry food he brought. After eating a little, she could not help but fall asleep. Song Qingshu also leaned against the wall and closed his eyes to rest. In the middle of the night, he was suddenly awakened by a movement beside him. He saw that Hu Qingtong's eyes were tightly closed. Her body was trembling unconsciously. "Cold." Recommend the new book by the history god Desert, The Elegance of the Sun and the Moon. It's a little interesting. Who is the elegance of the moon? Chapter 2468. Song Qingshu hurried over to check on her. "Qingtong, what's wrong?" Unfortunately, Hu Qingtong did not respond to him. She just kept trembling. Song Qingshu hurried over to find some firewood to make the fire bigger. However, the cold wind was still howling at the entrance of the cave. He even saw large snowflakes falling slowly at the entrance of the cave. "What the hell?" Song Qingshu cursed in his heart. The weather in the western region was so strange. The sun was scorching hot in the day, but the temperature dropped drastically at night. When he returned to Hu Qingtong's side, Song Qingshu realized that her condition had not improved. He could not help but worry. Was it because the weather was too cold, or because her wound was infected? However, he could not let her continue to be so cold. Song Qingshu hurriedly sat down beside her and slowly transferred his internal energy into her body. Feeling the warm inner energy, Hu Qingtong's tightly furrowed brows finally relaxed a little. In her coma, she subconsciously wanted to be closer to the warm place, so she turned over and curled up in his arms. Song Qingshu could not help but laugh. If he did not know that she was indeed unconscious, he might have thought of her as a vixen who was lusting after his body. He took the opportunity to place one hand on her back and the other on her lower abdomen. Using both methods, he continuously channeled his internal energy into her body. Very soon, Hu Qingtong's body trembled less and less. In the end, her expression gradually became peaceful and calm. After an unknown period of time, Hu Qingtong slowly woke up and realized that he was lying in the other party's arms. He could not help but be shocked. "Don't hit me again. You were the one who crawled into my arms just now," Song Qingshu said hurriedly. Feeling the warm internal energy coming from her back and lower abdomen, Hu Qingtong vaguely remembered something. She could not help but feel a little embarrassed. "Am I such an unreasonable person in your heart?" Song Qingshu smiled and said, "I can't help it. I'm afraid of being beaten. Hua Qingtong was so angry that she pretended to hit him, but she was stunned. She noticed that there was a layer of fine sweat on his temples and forehead. Thinking about how he was transferring internal energy to her, she could not help but soften. You must be very tired. As she spoke, she pinched her sleeves and gently wiped the beads of sweat off his face. Her movements were gentle and delicate. Song Qingshu was stunned. Are you trying to seduce me? Hua Qingtong froze and said angrily, Your words are always so infuriating. Song Qingshu shrugged. Because women will only fall in love with men who make her cry, not men who make her smile. Hua Qingtong turned his head and ignored him. However, after a while, his heart softened. Stop for a while. I think you're exhausted. Song Qingshu breathed a sigh of relief. You finally know how to care for me, my great aunt. He let go of his hands and wiped the sweat off his face. Half of his clothes were soaked. Hua Qingtong was rather embarrassed. How long have you been transfusing inner energy for me? It's been at least 2 to 4 hours. Song Qingshu hurriedly drank a mouthful of water to calm himself down. He felt that his stamina wasn't that great after his injury. In the past, he wouldn't have been this tired. Thank you, Hua Qingtong said softly. How are you feeling now? Song Qingshu asked. Much better. Hua Qingtong nodded, but he still subconsciously tightened his clothes. Are you still cold? Song Qingshu frowned. Hua Qingtong replied, Tianshan is like this. It's very cold at night. It's a pity that I lost my luggage when I was being chased. I don't have enough clothes. Song Qingshu said in a deep voice, I'm injured. I'm afraid I can't use my inner energy to warm you up like I did before. If it was like this for one night, then he wouldn't be able to hurry on with his journey. Moreover, it would greatly delay his recovery time. This was completely unacceptable to him because he still had to wait for his injuries to recover before doing something big. It's okay. I can warm myself by the fire now. Hua Qingtong moved away from his embrace and adjusted the bonfire with a branch. Were the injuries on your body caused by the fight with Temujin and Pangban? You know about it too? Song Qingshu was stunned. Hua Qingtong pursed his lips and smiled. Everyone in the world knows that you fought against 3 great grandmasters alone. How could I not know? It's a pity that he was still beaten and fled. Song Qingshu sighed. The scene of Dugu, seeking for loss, killing Meng Qiheng with one sword appeared in his mind again. He wondered when he would be able to do that. The two of them chatted for a while. The bonfire was getting smaller and smaller. After all, Song Qingshu was in a hurry to save people and didn't have time to gather much firewood. Now that it was snowing heavily outside, the firewood he gathered could not be used. Song Qingshu noticed that Hua Qingtong's body began to tremble slightly again. He said, Come here. I don't want those 4 hours of inner energy to be wasted. Hua Qingtong bit his lip. But you won't be able to hold on. Song Qingshu smiled slightly. It's okay. I'll just rest for a while after I lose. Hua Qingtong shook his head. We still have to hurry to inform the tribe. How can you be exhausted? Song Qingshu sighed. You're going to die soon. Don't think about the tribe. To me, your entire tribe is not as important as you. Hua Qingtong's heart skipped a beat. She looked at him with a complicated expression. Do you treat every woman like this? Song Qingshu shook his head. No, I only treat pretty girls like this. You're always so frivolous. Hua Qingtong laughed. But my sister is in the tribe. She's much prettier than me. Will you change your mind? Princess Xiangxiang. Song Qingshu nodded. Then I'll change it to the entire tribe is not as important as you and your sister. You're really shameless. Thank you for the compliment. Soon, the two of them fell into silence. The bonfire gradually extinguished and the entire cave became completely dark. Come here. You're a heroine. You don't have to be so shy, do you? Song Qingshu could not help but laugh. Who's shy? Hua Qingtong snorted and moved to his side. She hesitated for a moment. Actually, you don't have to waste your internal energy. Then, won't you freeze to death? Song Qingshu was stunned. He had his internal energy to protect his body. Hua Qingtong was very weak now. How could she withstand it? Hua Qingtong turned her head and said in a barely audible voice, You can hug me and use your body to keep warm. Okay. Song Qingshu smiled and pulled her into his arms. Hua Qingtong thought that he would decline on the surface. She did not expect him to be so impolite. She could not help but feel a little embarrassed. Did you deliberately lure me into saying that? Song Qingshu shook his head. That's because you're kind and you can't bear to let me waste my internal energy. Hua Qingtong gritted her teeth. Let's make this clear. After tonight, no one is allowed to mention this to anyone else. I know. You have a fiancé. I won't ruin your reputation. Song Qingshu held her in his arms and warmed her with the heat of his chest. Hearing the words fiancé, Hua Qingtong's eyes flashed a trace of sadness. However, she did not say anything. The cave returned to its tranquility. After a while, feeling her slightly cold body, Song Qingshu said, This won't do. The heat can't pass to your body through your clothes. Some words have been said on the official account, but many people have not added the official account, so I'll say it again. Ah Qing's original form is Zhao Chu, the head of the 33 swordsmen in Wuyue swordsmen. At the same time, in the legend of pacifying demons written by Luo Guanzhong and Feng Menglong, she is the incarnation of the mysterious fairy of the ninth heaven. In Jin Yang system, Ah Qing has always been the first character. Others like Shi Patian, the sweeping monk, and Zhang Sanfeng compete for second place. She has always been a transcendent character. When it comes to martial arts, she is generally not included. Of course, Shi Patian, who cheats in the later stages, is also a little beyond the scope of martial arts. However, in the book Journey of the Gallant, Zhang Sanfeng and Dharma are clearly listed as martial arts legends. To a certain extent, no matter how powerful Shi Patian is, to a certain extent similar to these two. So in my opinion, Ah Qing's martial arts value is undisputedly the first in the Golden Book, unless she is not written. Since she appears, she must follow her first position. In addition, she has a mythical character, so the book is set to have the projection of the mysterious fairy of the ninth heaven in her body. She is equivalent to an existence that protects the world. The entire book is still within the scope of martial arts, not Xinxia. Chapter 2469. Shut up. Hua Qingtong's face was a little red in the dark. Do we have to take off our clothes and hug each other? Why not? Song Qingshu saw that she was showing signs of losing her temper and said hurriedly, Hey, I'm the one who's at a disadvantage. Hua Qingtong was so angry that she laughed. What did you suffer? Song Qingshu said, I read those stories about chivalry. It's usually about a male chivalrous hero who is injured and shivering in the middle of the night. Then, his confidante takes off her clothes and uses her body to warm him. Everyone will think that the girl is at a disadvantage and is willing to sacrifice her body to save the hero. Why am I not at a disadvantage when it's my turn to save you? Hua Qingtong was a little dizzy by his fallacious reasoning. How can it be the same? Song Qingshu smiled and said, What's the difference? Hua Qingtong was annoyed. Anyway, it's different. I don't know where you read those messy stories. How can there be such a thing? Song Qingshu revealed a nostalgic expression. I don't know how many such stories there are in my hometown, but unfortunately, I can't see them now. Hua Qingtong spat. No wonder you're so bad. Song Qingshu sighed. I said that on purpose to resolve your embarrassment, but you misunderstood me. I'm really a little sad. Hua Qingtong also said faintly, I know, but I'm a woman after all. Song Qingshu smiled bitterly and said, I was teasing you just now. I'll transfer my internal energy to you. As he said that, he pressed his palm on her back again. No need. You'll consume too much energy this way. Hua Qingtong pressed his hand down and shook her head slightly. Forget it. You're lucky. After saying that, she unbuttoned her clothes. In fact, her coat was already a little tattered because of the escape. There was not much left of the lining because he had just treated her wound. Therefore, with a little force, it slipped from her shoulder and her whole body was pressed tightly against the chest of the man beside her. Hug me tightly. Song Qingshu hurriedly took off his coat and put it behind her. Don't catch a cold. Hu Tong buried her head in his arms and did not speak. The two bodies hugged each other tightly, and the cave fell into a strange silence. Feeling the beauty in his arms tremble slightly, Song Shu did not know if it was because she was cold or afraid. He felt a little apologetic and hurriedly circulated his internal energy throughout his body. His entire body became as warm as the sun. Hu Tong hugged him tightly, and her stiff body gradually softened. Of being. Oof, of Song. I'm thinking about a physics problem, Song Shu replied. Physics? Hu Tong was stunned. Obviously, he had never heard of this term. Song Shu explained, I took a course in the past, and there was a chapter that talked about work efficiency. It mentioned that it's impossible to use 100% of energy. In the process of work, most of the energy is wasted and only a small amount of energy is used on the blade. Do you know that some experts in the martial arts world will pass on their skills to their disciples? Song Shu said, when they passed on their skills, only a small part of the inner force was digested and absorbed by the disciple. Most of the inner force dissipated into the air. Hu Tong understood a little. But why did you suddenly mention this? Song Shu answered, because I transferred my inner energy to you to keep you warm just now. I exhausted myself to keep your body temperature. Most of my inner energy was wasted in the air. But now I only need to circulate my inner energy in my body. It's easy for me to keep you warm. Why didn't I think of doing this earlier? Hu Tong was so angry that she pinched him hard, causing Song Shu to scream. It's fine if you pinch me, but don't split your wound open, Song Shu hurriedly reminded. Hu Tong had already pinched a piece of flesh with her 2 fingers, but when she heard him say this, she couldn't bear to use more strength. What do you think our tribe should do next? Song Shu laughed to himself. He knew that she was changing the topic on purpose to distract him, but he still answered, can you be sure that your tribe is united and everyone will be united to fight the Mongolians to the end with you? Hu Tong thought about it and shook her head. I'm a woman after all. In the past, many people didn't really respect me, but because I always led them to victory, I was able to suppress them. But now that I have led the army to defeat, I'm afraid many people will jump out. If that's the case, take your family and hide in the Vulture Palace. That is my territory. It is in the mountains, and the Mongolians won't be able to attack. Song Shu said. This was a retreat plan he had been thinking of recently. The other forces were far away in the Central Plains, and it was easy for them to be attacked by the Mongolian cavalry on the way. Coincidentally, the Vulture Palace was on Mount Tian, and it was not too far away from the Muswolan tribe. Many people from the Vulture Palace had been transferred to Lin and to help control the palace. There are still some people left, and it should not be a big problem for them to protect themselves. Hu Tong shook her head. That is, after all, my native tribe. I still have to try my best to see if I can protect them. Song Shu immediately felt a sense of respect. Most people in the world would weigh the pros and cons, but there were still some people who would do things even though they knew it was impossible. It was because of these people that the cultural heritage would not be destroyed. Soon, the cave fell silent again. Hu Tong said softly, I'm going to sleep. Song Shu nodded. Okay. After a while, he felt a strange movement in his arms. Song Shu could not help but ask, what's wrong? How can I sleep with you like this? I'm sorry. I didn't mean it. It's purely a physiological reaction. Hu Tong was silent for a while, and suddenly asked, Brother Song, do you think I will die with the Mongolian army here? Song Shu hugged her tightly. Don't worry, I will definitely save you. Thank you. A smile appeared on Hu Tong's face. Actually, I don't want to die. There are still many things I haven't done in my life. If I die like this, I will have regrets. What kind of things haven't the dignified yellow robe of green feathers done before? Song Shu was curious. For example, as soon as she finished speaking, she raised her head and kissed his lips. Song Shu was stunned. Before he could react, his hands had already tightly hugged her energetic body. What's wrong? Did you touch a wound? Yes, wait, let me adjust it. Song Qing-shu put his hands under her armpits and lifted her up. She sat in his arms with her back facing him. Hua Qingtong tilted her head back slightly, and her face was flushed. "You are so skilled." Song Qing-shu smiled and did not answer. He kissed her from behind. At that moment, Hua Qingtong felt that the cold air around them seemed to have become warm. After an unknown amount of time, Song Qing-shu sucked his bag over, took out a blanket, and wrapped it around the two of them. Hua Qingtong was stunned. "Why didn't you take it out just now? Would you believe me if I said I forgot?" "I don't believe you, you bad thing." Chapter 2470. Under the blanket, a young man and woman were hugging each other tightly. Song Qing-shu gently stroked the beautiful hair of the beauty in his arms and said with some emotion, "Qingtong, are you planning to go back to live and die with the tribe this time? Is that why you suddenly let go of yourself like this? Because you have the will to die?" Hua Qingtong's face was flushed, and she sighed faintly. "You really understand a woman's mind. That's right. After all, that is the place where I was born and raised. If it is destined to be destroyed by the Mongolians, then I will definitely accompany it." Song Qing-shu said in a low voice, "Why are you so stupid? As long as there is life, there will be hope. As long as you are alive, there will be a day when you can turn defeat into victory." Hua Qingtong shook her head, and there was some confusion in her eyes. "Now that the Mongolians are powerful, where is Qing Shan? I can't see any hope of turning defeat into victory." Song Qing-shu patted his chest. "Although you don't have Qing Shan, you have Qing Shu. Don't worry, as long as I am here, I will lead you to defeat them sooner or later." Hua Qingtong bit his flesh. "I haven't settled the score with you for lying to me just now." Song Qing-shu could not help but mumble in a low voice. "You were the one who took the initiative first." Hua Qingtong glared at him fiercely, and in the end, she said helplessly, "This time, the odds are against our tribe. Zhang Wuji is also dead, so I have nothing to worry about. I'll just take it that you got lucky, and I can also settle one of my own worries." Song Qing-shu's expression suddenly became strange. "Zhang Wuji is dead? Where did you hear that?" Hua Qingtong sighed. Even though the Ming dynasty announced to the public that their cult master is in seclusion, it's impossible for there to be no news at all after such a long time. Moreover, when the Mongolians attacked the western region some time ago, I wanted to join forces with the Ming dynasty to fight against the enemy. Unfortunately, he still didn't respond. Our spies in the Ming dynasty have sent word that he has been missing for a long time. There are many different theories within the Ming dynasty. Some say that Yang Shao rebelled against his superiors. Some say that Zhang Wuji died from his injuries. Some say that he assassinated Temujin and died. The flags of 5 elements and the scattered ones have already publicly broken off all relations with Yang Shao, and the Ming dynasty is in chaos. If he is still alive, how could he not care? Song Qing-shu's expression was a little strange. "So you think your fiancé is dead, so you don't have any psychological burden to do that with me? What else do you think?" Hua Qingtong glared at him hatefully. "Although I don't have any feelings for him, since we have an alliance, I will abide by it. How can I let you off so easily?" Song Qing-shu couldn't help but say, "What if I tell you that he's not dead?" Hua Qingtong was speechless. Don't joke about something like this. Hua Qingtong's heart was also pounding. He should be in Mongolia. Song Qing-shu told him the information he had obtained and his speculation. He has been pretending to be a Tongtian shaman. Hua Qingtong was dumbfounded. "That's right," Song Qing-shu said. "I only realized it when I saw the Tongtian shaman's body and noticed that he had been hit by the asteroid-sucking technique. That guy has indeed hidden himself well. Right now, he should be hiding somewhere in Helen City, secretly recuperating. Naturally, he has no energy to care about the Ming dynasty." Hua Qingtong gritted his teeth. Then, when he became a Tongtian shaman, did he plan to give up on the Ming dynasty from the beginning? "That should be the case," Song Qing-shu replied. "Actually, we all know that whether it is the Ming dynasty or the Wood Table Luan tribe, although they can win 1 or 2 battles, they are destined to be no match for the Mongolians. It is only a matter of time before they are destroyed. He must have been looking for a way out, and finally chose to sneak into the Mongolian interior. Then why didn't he tell me? He caused me. Hua Qingtong couldn't continue for a moment. Song Qingshu smiled and moved closer. Caused you to be bullied by me? Bah, Hua Qingtong spat. I'm a master of my own body. So what if he is alive? Green feather yellow shirt is indeed a heroine. Song Qingshu gave her a thumbs up. Hua Qingtong suddenly thought of something and couldn't help but ask in a trembling voice. Then, in the Gaochang labyrinth, the Tongtian shaman was already him? Yes, so you personally said in front of your fiancé that you were my woman. Song Qingshu laughed gloatingly. You bastard, you did it on purpose. Hua Qingtong pinched and bit. This guy was too despicable. He had led her into a trap step by step. Song Qingshu laughed as he dodged, reminding him, don't open up your wound. Forget it if you die. Haven't you embarrassed yourself enough? Hua Qingtong said hatefully. Song Qingshu hugged her tightly and said gently, you are a heroine. How can you be like those ordinary women? Moreover, that guy chose to give up on the Ming dynasty. He has already betrayed the alliance between the two of you. What do you have to apologize for? Hua Qingtong bit her red lips. But I still feel strange. That proves that we are not familiar enough. Come, let's get to know each other better. Song Qingshu said as he started to touch her up and down again. You bastard. Hua Qingtong's face was red, but she still reluctantly complied. The next morning, Hua Qingtong was worried about the safety of her tribe. She ignored her injuries and insisted on continuing on their journey. Song Qingshu carried her all the way through the mountains and fields. Hua Qingtong's usually heroic eyes became tender and sweet in his arms. She gently wiped the sweat from his forehead. Are you tired? Song Qingshu shook his head. My body is very good now. Ha! With the help of the two princesses and Hua Qingtong's primordial yin last night, his previous injuries could be said to have completely healed. At this moment, he was smiling proudly in the mountains and was really proud of his success. Hua Qingtong recalled the situation in the cave last night and could not help but blush. This guy's body was indeed unbelievably good. The two of them passed through the mountains and came to a large grassland. Hua Qingtong, who could be considered half the owner, introduced him along the way. This was the Naladi grassland, and behind it was the Bayanbuluk grassland. Later, the two of them met a group of local herdsmen. Song Qingshu wanted to find them to buy horses and camels, but unfortunately, there was a language barrier. They looked at him warily. Fortunately, Hua Qingtong was there to communicate with them in the local language. In addition, she was beautiful and valiant, so she won the favor of the local herdsmen in an instant. After selling their horses, she also gave them a lot of horse milk wine and dry food. Song Qingshu could not help but feel a little indignant. These lecherous guys. If a few girls saw me, they would not have that attitude. Do you believe me? I believe you. Seeing that he was like a child, Hua Qingtong could not help but smile. The two of them went deep into the grassland. The grassland was as flat as a mirror, completely different from the ups and downs in the mountains. Gazing into the distance, they only felt that heaven and earth were connected, and everything was silent. It was as if there were only the two of them in the universe. Although Song Qingshu was skilled in martial arts, he could not help but shudder when he was in such a state. He suddenly felt that the universe was boundless, and he was abnormally small. The two of them rode for dozens of miles, but did not see anyone. Suddenly, Song Qingshu jumped onto Hua Qingtong's horse. What are you doing? Hua Qingtong was stunned. I've seen a plot in a movie before, and I've always been curious about whether it can be done, so I want to try it myself. He pulled Hua Qingtong into his arms and whispered a few words into her ear. Hua Qingtong's pretty face instantly turned red. No way. It's too ridiculous. There's no one around anyway, Song Qingshu said. Besides, isn't your martial arts on horseback very good? Let me see it. Hua Qingtong was annoyed. How can my martial arts be the same as what you're thinking? I think it's similar. Song Qingshu nodded seriously. In such a vast place, it was easy to let go of oneself. In addition, thinking about the uncertain future of the Muzhualuan tribe, Hua Hua Qingtong also felt like she was celebrating before she died. So in the end, she could not resist the other party's coaxing and pestering and gave in to his wishes. Just like that, the two of them stuck to each other. Time passed quickly, and before long, they were nearing the territory of the Muzhualuan tribe. Hua Qingtong's face also regained its sanctity and did not allow him to fool around anymore. Song Qingshu did not insist, but he was a little depressed because he had always thought that his martial arts on horseback was pretty good. After all, he had personally led troops to battle so many times. Who knew that he would almost fall off the back of the horse several times? Fortunately, Hua Qingtong, who had grown up on horseback, held on tightly to him and was often teased by him because of this. Just as Hua Qingtong was teasing him about this, a passing herdsman suddenly recognized her and told her that something had happened in Yarkand. Chapter 2471. The color drained from Hua Qingtong's face as she hurriedly asked what had happened. After some communication, she finally understood what had happened. It turned out that the Mutualan tribe was led by two leaders. The two leaders were brothers. The elder brother was Bodu, who was based in the city of Kashgar, which was later known as Kashgar. The second brother was Hua Qingtong's father, Mutualan, who was based in the city of Yarkand, which was later known as Shacha. The two brothers had been working together for the past few years to conquer the south and the north. They could be considered to have conquered the southern border together. At the same time, they had repelled the Mongolian invasions several times. However, Hua Qingtong had been in the limelight for the past few years. As a woman, she led the tribe to victory in every battle and made a name for herself. More importantly, she was extremely beautiful. Even the people of the Central Plains had heard of the famous yellow robe with green feathers. The consequence of this was that the Mu Tianluan tribe was the most powerful tribe, and the limelight was stolen by them. The other Bodu, as the eldest brother, was not inferior to the Mu Tianluan tribe in terms of strength and contribution. However, outsiders would only call them the Mu Tianluan tribe. Bodu would inevitably be dissatisfied if this went on, but it was still tolerable on the whole. Until a few days ago, when a woman appeared by Bodu's side. Bodu fell head over heels for her. When he learned that Hua Qingtong had been defeated on the front lines, he finally made up his mind to lead his army to attack Yarkand. Muzelin thought that his brother had come to support him and did not take any precautions. Of course, his main force had been taken away by Hua Qingtong, so there was no point in taking precautions. Bodu led his army to attack Yarkand. In the chaos of battle, Muzelin and his son, Hua Ai, died in battle. His daughter, Princess Xiangxiang, was captured. It was said that Bodu planned to offer her to Temujin as a gift of surrender. Hua Qingtong was already injured, and when she learned that her father and brother had died in battle, her vision darkened and she fainted. Song Qingshu was startled and hurried over to support her. "You should leave quickly. If Bodu's people know that Miss Hua is here, they will definitely send people to capture you," the herdsman hurriedly reminded them. He had been trading with the Han people for many years and knew a few words of Chinese. "Thank you." Song Qingshu secretly sighed at Hua Qingtong's high prestige here. Even now, there were still people willing to inform her. Song Qingshu cupped his hands to thank the herdsman and left with Hua Qingtong. When Hua Qingtong woke up and realized that he was in a dilapidated house, he couldn't help but cry when he thought of his father and brother's tragic state. "It's all my fault. If I hadn't been defeated at the front, Bodu wouldn't have dared to be so reckless." Song Qingshu hurriedly comforted him. "Don't put the blame on yourself. Even if this incident didn't happen, he would have acted because of something else. There's a saying in the Han, there's no such thing as guarding against thieves for 1,000 days. Hua Qingtong's emotions slowly calmed down after he comforted her with good intentions. "Where's this?" Hua Qingtong looked around and realized that it was not a herdsman's tent. Song Qingshu replied, "It's Yarkand. Now that the city is in chaos, it's not hard to find an empty house." Hua Qingtong's expression darkened. "Yarkand used to be prosperous, but now it's empty. In the end, it's all my fault," Song Qingshu said in a low voice. The Mongolians are strong. They can lose 8 or 10 times, but your tribe is weak and can't afford to lose even once. This is something that can be salvaged by manpower. You don't have to blame yourself too much. Seeing that she was depressed and lost, Song Qingshu knew that this incident was too big a blow to her. Any words of comfort would be useless. He could only change his approach. Isn't your sister still in their hands? You should pull yourself together and think of a way to save her. That's right. Hua Qingtong's gray eyes brightened. Casley doesn't know martial arts, and she's usually so kind and weak. She must be very scared now that she's alone. I have to save her. Hua Qingtong struggled to stand up, but she felt dizzy and almost fell again. Song Qingshu hurriedly supported her. You've lost too much blood and are very weak now. You've been in a hurry, and the food you've eaten is not nutritious. You should rest first. Hua Qingtong shook her head. No, I can't let Casley be alone. You don't know how beautiful she is. No man can resist her charm. Every moment she falls into the enemy's hands is one more moment of danger. Song Qingshu thought, how could I not know how beautiful Princess Fragrance is? She's one of the most beautiful women in the entire Golden Book system. How about this? I'll help you save your sister, and you promise me to rest and recuperate. No, I want to go too, Hua Qingtong insisted. Song Qingshu pointed at her pale face. You're so weak now. Not only will you not be able to help, but I'll also have to split my attention to protect you. Hua Qingtong gradually regained her rationality. Thinking about it, she agreed. But you've never seen my sister. What if you save the wrong person? Song Qingshu laughed involuntarily. When the time comes, I'll just go find the prettiest girl. You have to believe in my taste. Ordinary beauties won't catch my eye at all. I promise I can recognize your sister at first glance. Hua Qingtong snorted. Who doesn't know that young Master Song has many female friends in the world? You don't have to show off like this. Song Qingshu was speechless. I'm telling you not to worry. All right. Anyway, my sister is much more beautiful than me. You can use me as a benchmark, Hua Qingtong said. Song Qingshu helped her tidy up the messy hair on her temples. Don't belittle yourself. You are obviously an outstanding beauty. That's because you haven't seen my sister. Hua Qingtong bit her lip and suddenly thought of something. You're not allowed to have any bad thoughts about my sister. Don't worry. I won't have any ideas about my sister-in-law. Song Qingshu paused. But what if she takes the initiative to fall in love with me? Hua Qingtong rolled her eyes at him. Although I know you're deliberately making me happy, I really want to bite you to death. Song Qingshu laughed and walked over to pick her up. I better find a place to settle you down first. I'm worried about leaving you here. Do you have any trusted aides or a safe place in this city? Hua Qingtong shook her head. My trusted aides were all killed or injured when I went out to battle this time. Many of them could have escaped, but in order to save me. Why didn't you come earlier? As she spoke, her eyes turned red. She couldn't help but cry in his arms. Song Qingshu gave a secret sigh. No wonder she slapped him back then. It wasn't just because she was afraid, but also because of the regret of watching her comrades die to save her. After she calmed down a little, Song Qingshu said, Didn't I ask you to take care of the Taiyin tribe people last time? Where did you place them? Why don't you go to them and ask about the latest news in the city? I gave the Taiyin tribe a field at the foot of the southern mountain and also prepared a house for Yali Xian and her daughter in the city. It's on the southern side of the city. I don't know if they were affected by this incident. Hua Qingtong had a worried expression. Let's go take a look. If there's nothing wrong, we can let them take care of you. I'll be reassured. Song Qingshu said. Hua Qingtong gave a sound of understanding. She suddenly had a bit of doubt. Are they also your women? Song Qingshu's heart skipped a beat, and he quickly explained, Don't think too much. They have never seen me like this before. I have always used the identity of the Watermoon Great Sect to deal with them. So it's like this. Hua Qingtong did not dispel his doubts. But they are so beautiful. It doesn't match your personality. Quickly tell me, do you have an affair with a big beauty or a little beauty? Let me be prepared. Otherwise, it will be awkward when I see them later. Chapter 2472. No, there is nothing between us. Song Qingshu subconsciously denied it. Wouldn't he be asking for trouble if he admitted to this kind of question? Who would have thought that Hua Qingtong would become angry? You really don't have many truths coming out of your mouth. Who was it in the Tai Yin tribe that helped you, and you Li Xian deal with the aftermath? Your voice was so loud that it could be heard from several hundred meters away. Song Qingshu thought about it and instantly felt a bit embarrassed. No wonder Hua Qingtong was so strong on the battlefield. He was too sly, even knowing how to fish. He could only awkwardly explain, "I've used too many identities over the years and couldn't remember. I didn't lie to you on purpose." Hua Qingtong rolled her eyes at him. All right. I always knew that you were a womanizer, so I didn't have high expectations of you here." Song Qingshu chuckled a few times. He thought to himself that people couldn't be set up like that. In his previous life, why did so many famous people lose their reputations? It was because they always set up the image of a good husband, a good wife, and a devoted wife. Once something happened, their entire person would be ruined. On the contrary, people like him, who always had the image of scumbag, would naturally have low expectations of him. Occasionally, he would act a little more devoted, which would actually add to his reputation. The two of them came to Yili Xian and Man's residence. When they opened the door, there were several blades flying at them. Song Qingshu had already sensed that there were people in the room. With a wave of his sleeve, he sent the blades to the ground. "Everyone stop, it's Miss Hua." One of them shouted, Miss Hua is back. A man and the others can be saved." The group of people were all excited. Song Qingshu was stunned. He noticed that they were dressed in the Tai Yin tribe's attire and quickly asked, "What happened to Man and the others?" Those people looked at him and saw that he was suitable to come with Hua Qingtong, so they did not hide anything. They were captured by Bo Du's people and brought to the city lord's palace. We were discussing how to save them. Song Qingshu secretly sighed that beauty in this chaotic world would bring endless trouble to women. He suddenly noticed that a familiar figure was missing from the crowd. Where's Su Pu? Why don't I see him? As the leader of the younger generation, Sup liked Amon so much. How could he not be there when something happened to Amon? Su Pu was killed by Bodo's subordinates in order to stop Amon from being taken away. Those people had mournful and resentful expressions on their faces, revealing the corpses of many of their clansmen behind them. Only then did Song Qingshu notice Su Pu's ashen face. He squatted down to examine the body and found that Su Pu's heart meridian had been broken by someone's internal energy. The culprit's Kung Fu was quite high. When did this happen? About 2 hours ago. We just heard the news and rushed over. We were about to rush to the city lord's mansion to rescue and take revenge, those people replied. Song Qingshu frowned. Aren't you just throwing your lives away by attacking the city lord's mansion? The main force of Taiyan tribe's young and strong men had already been killed by the Mongolian soldiers, and the ones who survived were the old and weak. They did not have much offensive power. Those people were enraged. Even if we can't win, we still have to fight. Our Taiyan tribe is not coward. Miss Hua is back. With her leading the way, we will definitely win. Seeing that these people were looking at Hua Qingtong fervently, Song Qingshu finally knew how high her prestige was in this area. By Chinese network. I happen to know of a secret passage that leads to the city lord's mansion. You guys come with me, Hua Qingtong said after thinking for a while. Song Qingshu was shocked and hurriedly asked, Your injury? Hua Qingtong shook her head. It was just a sudden bad news just now, and I haven't calmed down yet. I'm much better now. Don't worry, there won't be a problem. These people can set fire to the city lord's mansion once they enter, and they can also help to distract some of the POTA soldiers. At this time, one of the Taiyan tribe warriors said, Actually, it's not that bad. This time, it's not just our tribe. There are many other warriors who will attack the city lord's mansion. Why? Hua Qingtong was also a little curious. Could it be to avenge her father? But in her heart, she knew that it would be fine if the situation had not been decided. But now that the Muzhualuan tribe was clearly finished, would these people risk their lives? Because Princess Xiangxiang has said that she will marry whoever can avenge her. All the warriors in the surrounding villages have gone crazy and want to charge into the city lord's mansion, the man answered. Hua Qingtong was shocked. My sister actually made such a promise? No one knew her sister's charm better than her. Her sister was publicly recognized as the #1 beauty in the Western region, and she even thought that she was the most beautiful woman in the world. But previously, her sister had been close to Leader Chun of the Red Flower Society. Why would she use her own happiness as a stake this time? Another person said, Princess Xiangxiang is indeed Miss Hua's sister. She is truly a heroine. To avenge her father and brother, she actually made such a promise. I heard that a young master, Chun, died to save her. His father and brother died, and so did his lover. So in desperation, he made this plan. Hearing their discussion, Hua Qingtong hurriedly asked, Young Master Chun? Which young Master Chun? I think it's some Red Flower Society. I heard someone call him Leader Chun. When Yelqiang City was breached, he desperately protected Princess Xiangxiang out of the city. But in the end, he couldn't do it alone. Song Qingshu was also stunned. Xun Jialua had died just like that. Although he didn't really like this guy in the original work, who had given his woman away for the sake of the country, he was still a gentleman. He couldn't help but feel a little sad that a familiar person had died without a sound. If I don't take revenge, I am not human, Hua Qingtong said hatefully. Although she and Chan Jialua didn't have any feelings for each other in this world, after fighting together for so long, she treated him as a very good friend. Now that the new and old grudges were added together, she was even more anxious to take revenge. Song Qingshu didn't dare to delay any longer. He led a group of people to the city lord's residence. With Hua Qingtong leading the way, they found a secret passage in a well in a courtyard and quietly snuck into the back courtyard of the city lord's residence. After entering the residence, the warriors of the Taiyan tribe grabbed a guard and asked where Man and the others were. They hurriedly rushed over. Hua Qingtong hurriedly stopped them, telling them to set fires everywhere and create chaos. Otherwise, even if they managed to save the people later, the city lord's residence would be heavily guarded, and they wouldn't be able to leave. Since they're preparing to give Casli to Temujin, she shouldn't be in danger for the time being. Let's save Man and the others first, Hua Qingtong quickly said to Song Qingshu. Song Qingshu couldn't help but admire her. In such a short period of time, she had thought through everything clearly, as expected of the yellow robes of green feathers. Hua Qingtong was very familiar with the residents. After hearing the guard's words, she quickly led Song Qingshu to the place. Chapter 2473. Save them first. Seeing the soldiers leave, Song Qingshu quickly brought Hua Qingtong's group in. They found a large and small beauty hugging each other as they cried. Who else could it be other than Yili Xian and Man? Song Qingshu was shocked, thinking that they had been bullied. When he saw that their clothes were fine, he let out a sigh of relief. You are... Yili Xian and Man couldn't help being stunned when they saw the man who suddenly charged in, subconsciously hiding behind him. Song Qingshu finally remembered that they had only seen the water moon's sex appearance and did not know his true appearance. He had really shot himself in the foot. Yili Xian, Man, we're here to save you. Hua Qingtong also came in at this time. Seeing that the two girls were safe, he let out a sigh of relief. Miss Hua, Yili Xian, and Man were pleasantly surprised when they saw her. Seeing the tribe members behind her, they felt like they were in a dream. Song Qingshu gave a cough. We'll slowly catch up after we leave. That's right. I heard from the guards that you were captured by an expert. Where is he? Man's eyes instantly turned red. That person is a big bad person. Su Pu died under his hands. Before, Taiyan's group made Song Qingshu have a good impression of this beautiful little girl. Seeing her pitiful appearance now, he couldn't help feeling angry. What is that person's name? I'll help you take revenge. Thank you, hero. Man revealed a look of pleasant surprise, but she quickly shook her head. But I don't know that evil person's name. I only know that he is fat and very ugly. Song Qingshu. How did he find people with this kind of description? It was a good thing Yili Xian knew more on the side. He was trying to bully us just now. He seemed to call himself the evil Buddha. Evil Buddha, Zhongzhongyo? Song Qingshu was stunned, but he immediately reacted. Since Bai Fenghua was luring Bodo here, it was obvious that Brother Ali Buj had also sent other experts from the Heaven's Mandate cult over to help. Although Dan Yuru was the cult leader, these elders were not under her jurisdiction, so she naturally did not know their movements. It was true that a dog couldn't stop eating shit. Back then, in Xixia, Zhong Zhongyou had harbored evil intentions towards Madame Qiu, the princess, and even Dan Yuru. Who would have thought that he wouldn't change even after coming here? You said he was trying to bully you? Where is he? Song Qingshu hurriedly asked. Just now, we thought that we were doomed. Who would have thought that a guard would come and call for him? It seemed that someone had broken into the city lord's mansion. The city lord mobilized the experts there, and he could only hurry over. Compared to a man who only knew how to cry, Yili Xian had more experience, so she was much calmer and could answer questions in an orderly manner. However, there was some doubt in her eyes. Why did the man in front of her give her a very familiar feeling? But she was very sure that she had never seen this person before. Hua Qingtong was shocked. Those people must have come to save my little sister. Let's quickly go and help. Song Qingshu nodded and quickly ordered the Taiyan tribe's warriors to bring Yili Xian and Hua Qingtong out of the city lord's mansion through the secret passage. He would meet up with them after this matter was over. Then he brought Hua Qingtong alone and rushed in the direction of the loud sound. In a courtyard on the east side of the city lord's mansion, there was a large group of people fighting. It was a group of warriors of the prairies that had charged into the city lord's mansion. Hearing Princess Fragrance's oath, they all seemed like they had gone crazy. However, they were fighting on their own. How could they be a match for the regular army under Badu's command? In addition, Badu had invited a group of experts from God knows where. They were truly like demons from hell. Very quickly, these brave warriors suffered heavy casualties. It was a good thing that a group of experts came to help them, gradually stopping their decline. But as more and more soldiers and experts came from the city lord's mansion, they couldn't hold on any longer. An old man wearing a felt hat and linen clothes loudly said, "Mingmei, Zhengde, quickly retreat. There's an ambush here." A bald old man on the other side loudly scolded, "Isn't this nonsense? I also want to retreat. How can I leave?" A white-haired old woman on the side quickly reminded, "Be careful, don't be distracted. This fellow is very strong." These experts were the Heaven Lake strange hero Yuan Shishao, as well as the Heaven Mountain twin eagles Guan Mingmei and Chen Jingde. When they found out that something had happened to Mulan tribe, that Chen Zhuo had died in battle, and that Princess Fragrance had been captured, their eyes almost popped out of their sockets. Yuan Shishao had brought his granddaughter Yuan Zi and invited the Heaven Mountain twin eagles to take revenge, but who would have thought that Bodo would suddenly have so many experts under him? In the distance, a middle-aged man wearing a white hat laughed. When I found out about Casli's oath, I knew that there would be many people coming to save her, so I set up an inescapable net. None of you will be able to escape today. Mr. Bai, can I trouble you to take care of them? This middle-aged man was Mulan tribe's elder brother, Bodo, who now controlled all of southern Xinjiang. As for the person beside him whom he addressed as Mr. Bai, if Song Qingshu was here, he would definitely be able to recognize that he was the elite of Destiny cult by Yejing. He was the one who fought evenly against Hong Qigong in King Ali Buj's mansion. Besides him, there were a few other disciples from Weed faction, Lai Rian, and Evil Buddha Zhong Zhongyou. There were 5 of them, and the one with the highest martial arts was naturally Bloodhand Li Gong. However, Li Gong had always been in isolated training to fight against Pang Ban for the strongest in the evil cult. He usually did not participate in the cult's affairs. His senior sister, Fu Yaohong, was only skilled in the art of seduction, but in terms of martial arts, she could not compare to him. Lai Rian and Evil Buddha Zhong Zhongyou might be slightly weaker than him, but they were still the best in the world. They were more than enough to handle the matter of Mulan tribe. I don't need to do anything. They can handle it. Bai Yejing was a little concerned about his identity and did not want to participate in the siege. Lai Rian was up against Yuan Shishao, and Evil Buddha Zhong Zhongyou was up against the 2 eagles of Heaven Mountain. With the other elites surrounding him, they already had the upper hand. Not long after he finished speaking, evil Buddha Zhongyo struck Chunjingda's chest with his palm. Chunjingda lost his balance and fell back. The warrior who had been waiting for an opportunity behind him stabbed his back in the middle of his heart. The warrior was delighted with his success, but Chunjingda turned his elbow around and rammed it into him. His skull was instantly crushed, and he died. Chunjingda's sword had struck his vitals, and he knew that he would die here today. He shouted, and his divine might was awe-inspiring. The evil Buddha was shocked and took a step back. Chunjingda lifted his sword and threw it at Bodo. He knew that he would definitely die today, and if he could kill the culprit, Bodo, with his last strike, it would be worth it. When he sensed the might of the flying sword slicing through the air, Bodo turned pale with fright and quickly retreated. He tripped and fell to the ground. However, the flying sword suddenly stopped in the middle. It turned out that Bai Yejing had pinched it with 2 fingers and it could no longer move forward. Seeing this, Chunjingda was shocked and infuriated, and he spat out a mouthful of blood. Guan Mingmei, who was beside him, was shocked to see her husband throw away his sword. She hurried over to save him. Yuan Shishao was furious. He used all his power and blocked the attacks of Lai Rian and Zhong Zhongyo alone. Yuanzi also rushed over to help Guan Mingmei block the attacks of the surrounding soldiers, so that she could recover. Guan Mingmei hurriedly took out some ointment and applied it on his wound. Chunjingda shook his head with a wry smile and said to Guan Mingmei, "I'm sorry. I made you unhappy for decades. When you return to Tianshan, become husband and wife with Yuan. Brother Yuan, I'll be at ease in the netherworld." It turned out that the double eagles of Tianshan and Yuan Shishao were old friends since they were young. Yuan Shishao and Guan Mingmei were childhood sweethearts, but they both had bad tempers and often quarreled with each other. Once, Yuan Shishao went to Ma Bei in anger, and Guan Mingmei married Chunjingda, who had been secretly in love with her. After they lived a peaceful and happy life, Yuan Shishao returned to his hometown, but his lover had married someone else's wife. He had no choice but to live in seclusion in Tianqi near the residence of the Double Eagles to express his love. Because of this, Chunjingda had always been worried about Guan Mingmei. Therefore, they had been quarreling for decades, and everyone in the martial arts world knew that. However, now that Chunjingda knew that he was going to die, he suddenly let go of the entanglement in his heart. He only hoped that his lover could live happily in the remaining days. However, Guan Mingmei raised her eyebrows and shouted, "Don't you know that I've been loving you for the past few months? You can rest assured now." She put the sword to his throat, and he died immediately. Chunjingda didn't expect that she would be so unyielding. He couldn't help crying out loud before he stopped crying. He was holding his wife's body, and they both died in a pool of blood. Chapter 2474. Because of this unforeseen event, Yuan Shishao was shocked and angry. He had been entangled with the 2 eagles of Tianshan his entire life. Chunjingda was fine, but Guan Mingmei was the person he had always liked. The 2 of them were childhood sweethearts. They were supposed to be a couple, but because both of their tempers were too bad, a misunderstanding arose, and Chunjingda took advantage of the situation. But seeing her die for Chunjingda without hesitation, Yuan Shishao felt that many things in his heart collapsed. It was a bit difficult for him to deal with Lai Rian or Evil Buddha. Now, he was distracted when fighting against the 2 of them. His flaw was found in an instant, and Evil Buddha slapped his chest. Yuan Shishao spat out a mouthful of blood and fell to the ground. The surrounding warriors all slashed at him with their sabers. "Grandpa!" Yuan Zi exclaimed. She waved the white python whip in her hand and wrapped Yuan Shishao's body. She pulled him over in time and saved him from being dismembered. However, since the long whip in her hand was occupied, she could no longer resist the sabers of the soldiers around her. She could only close her eyes subconsciously and wait for death. Evil Buddha Zhong Zhongyo felt it was a pity. This girl in purple had an oval face, phoenix eyes, and cherry lips. Although she looked cold and arrogant, she was beautiful and radiant. If she stayed for a few days, she would be as happy as a fairy. However, they were far apart. He wanted to save her, but was afraid of being counterattacked by Yuan Shishao. He had lost the opportunity to save her. Forget it. Anyway, I still have the two beauties of the Taiyan tribe. Although the daughter will be given to the Khan, she will be more beautiful and mature as a fairy. I can play with her during this period. While he was deep in thought, a figure suddenly jumped into the courtyard. With a roll of the sleeves, the swords and sabers of the soldiers were all sucked into the sleeves of that person. Then, a huge force came, and the group of soldiers all screamed and retreated. Then they found that the weapons in their hands had been twisted into a fried dough twist. They were all shocked. Hearing the exclamations and screams around, Yuan Zi opened her eyes subconsciously and saw the man who had made her gnash her teeth with hatred standing in front of her solemnly. She didn't know whether it was because she had fallen down or not. At this moment, the man looked extremely tall in her eyes. Master, they were naturally Song Qing-shu and Hua Qingtong. At this moment, Hua Qingtong also saw the two eagles of Tianshan lying in a pool of blood. For a moment, he was extremely sorrowful and almost fainted. First, she learned of the death of her father and brother. Now, even her master, who had always taken care of her, was dead. For a moment, she felt how lonely and insignificant she was in this world. Song Qing-shu. By then, the Mongolians had already recognized Song Qing-shu, and they instinctively took a step back. Back in Helen City, they had witnessed with their own eyes how he had single-handedly fought against 3 great grandmasters. That scene was still fresh in their memories, especially the evil Buddha, Zhongzhongyo, who had suffered a crushing defeat at the hands of the other party in Western Xia. Fortunately, he had used the great art of heavenly demon disintegration to escape. Even now, his vitality had yet to recover. Song Qing-shu ignored them and went over to gently stroke Hua Qingtong's hair, comforting her gently. Because of the other party's move, even though they seemed to be defenseless, the surrounding soldiers still didn't dare to step forward. Song Qing-shu wiped away the tears on Hua Qingtong's cheeks. "Don't worry, I'll avenge you." Then he looked at Yuan Zi, who killed the 2 seniors. Yuan Zi subconsciously pointed at the evil Buddha Zhongzhongyo, who was retreating. The warrior who had launched a sneak attack on Chunjingda had been killed on the spot. Zhongzhongyo, who had hit him and caused him to be fatally injured, was the culprit. 56. Zhongzhongyo's countenance changed greatly. He hurriedly turned around and ran. Even though they had more people on their side and seemed to have the upper hand, he still didn't feel safe at all. There was only one thought in his mind: run, get out of this place as soon as possible. Unfortunately, just as he took a step forward, Song Qing-shu appeared in front of him out of nowhere. Zhongzhongyo was shocked and hurriedly exerted all his martial arts to attack Song Qing-shu, trying to buy more time by Yejing and the others to come to his rescue. Unexpectedly, Fang Xingjian raised his finger. Although his movement was very slow, in almost the blink of an eye, Fang Xingjian tapped on his forehead. Zhongzhongyo felt an extremely sharp sword qi rushing into his mind, and then he lost consciousness. When Bai Yejing, Lai Rian, and the others came to his rescue, Song Qing-shu had already returned to his original spot. They just happened to catch Zhongyo's corpse, which had fallen limply to the ground. Song Qing-shu said to Hua Qingtong, "Qingtong, I've already killed that person." "Thank you." Hua Qingtong's expression was distressed. Although he had taken revenge, his master still wouldn't be able to return. Song Qing-shu sighed. "Oh yes, I almost forgot about an enemy. Bodu killed your father and brother. However, he's your uncle after all. How do you think we should deal with him?" Hua Qingtong said hatefully, "I don't have such an uncle." Song Qing-shu nodded. "All right, I understand." He then stood up and faced Bodo's direction. Everyone there took a step back. Bodo swallowed hard and hid behind Bai Yejing. "Mr. Bai, I've pledged my allegiance to the Great Khan. You must protect me." Yejing's scalp was also a little numb, but he couldn't just ignore it in front of so many people. He could only bite the bullet and go forward to say, Song Qingshu, I know your martial arts are very strong, and none of us are your match in a one-on-one fight. However, there's so many of us here, and you might not be able to win if we all attack together. Bo Du, who was behind him, was stunned when he heard this. He thought to himself, this guy's been so arrogant when he first came to me. Previously, when you were dealing with Yuan Shao and the others, you were also unwilling to make a move because of your status. I thought you were some great expert, but now you're so scared? Song Qingshu said lightly, Today, I'm only going to kill the ringleader and not the innocent. Whoever gets in my way will die. Seeing that the Mongolian warrior's eyes were flickering, and it was obvious that they wanted to retreat, Bo Du cursed in his heart and hurriedly ordered his men, Go, shoot him to death. After all, he was an overlord, and there were many soldiers under his command. Upon hearing his order, they all drew their bows and knocked their arrows. Song Qingshu stamped his foot on the ground, and the weapons that had been scattered on the ground in the previous scuffle rose into the air and then shot out like lightning. The archers died tragically before they could fire their arrows. The other soldiers' jaws almost dropped. They had never seen such amazing martial arts in Nanjiang, and they couldn't help but retreat. Bo Du was scared and hurriedly waved his hands. Go! As he spoke, he turned and ran. There were too few soldiers here, and he didn't feel safe. He wanted to return to the barracks. However, those soldiers were not fools. Seeing that their commander-in-chief had fled, they did not dare to go forward and court death. Song Qingshu took advantage of the opportunity when they looked at each other to directly take a step behind the wave. He grabbed his shoulder and brought him back to Hua Qingtong. Qingtong, you can deal with him yourself. Looking at Hua Qingtong's dazed look, Song Qingshu knew that he had to let her vent her anger. Otherwise, she would get sick easily if she kept it in her heart. Yuan Zi's beautiful eyes were full of splendor. She thought to herself, if someone is willing to do such a thing for me, it's really worthwhile to die. However, she soon became gloomy because she knew that she didn't have a good relationship with this guy. Chapter 2475. Song Qingshu was secretly impressed. Hua Qingtong was indeed the famous yellow-robed man. She could still maintain her rationality in such a situation. Instead of rushing to take revenge, she asked about her sister. He was also a little curious. Princess Fragrance was the most legendary beauty in the Golden Book. He wondered how beautiful her hair was. Bo Du hurriedly said, Will you let me go if I answer? Hua Qingtong said coldly, There's no room for negotiation now. After all, Bo Du was also an ambitious person. He stretched his neck and said, I'm going to die anyway. If you want to kill me, then kill me. Why should I tell you? You. Hua Qingtong was furious, but the other party was really not afraid of death. There was nothing she could do. At this moment, Song Qingshu stepped forward and said, Although we're going to die, there's a difference between a happy death and a painful death. Do you know that our Han Dynasty has a kind of punishment? It's to bury a person in the ground with only his head exposed. Then we cut a hole in the top of his head and pour mercury in. What do you think will happen? Bo Du swallowed with difficulty. What will happen? Song Qingshu said with a smile. After the mercury is poured in, the person will feel itchy all over. It itches, and he will start to struggle. However, his whole body is buried in the ground. There's only a hole in the top of his head. Then he will kick hard and rush out of the wound on the top of his head. He doesn't even need his skin. You Han people are all devils. Bo Du could not bear listening anymore. He covered his ears and shouted. Song Qingshu's expression turned cold. To deal with a devil like you who kills your brother and nephew, we have to use devil methods. If you don't tell me, I have at least 99 similar methods here. You'll tell me eventually. I'll tell you. Bo Du panicked. He actually understood that most of the time, death was not the most terrifying thing. The most terrifying thing was to be unable to live or die. I secretly sent her away the day before yesterday to offer her to the Mongolian Great Khan. What? Sent her away? Hua Qingtong's body turned cold. Badu hurriedly nodded. Yes, because Castley swore that she would marry whoever avenged her. You know how many men adored Castley on the grasslands? I was worried that things would change over time. So, I arranged for someone to secretly send her to the Mongolian camp. Then, I set up a trap here and waited for someone to come and save her. Is what he said true? Song Qingshu looked coldly at Bai Yejing and the others. Bai Yejing hurriedly nodded. That's right. The one being escorted is my niece's precious disciple. After witnessing the scene of Lin Feng killing the evil Buddha, Zhong Zhongyo, how could he dare to have the slightest thought of resisting? Although his martial arts were higher than Zhong Zhongyo's, there was a limit to it. Both of them were experts of the same level, but this fellow's movements were so fast that he couldn't even see them clearly. He knew that if they really fought, he would die. Bai Fenghua. Song Qingshu frowned. Yes, so Prince Song also knows her. Bai Yejing secretly complained in his heart. No wonder people in Jianghu said that this surnamed Song was a lecherous person. It seemed that he knew all the beautiful women in the world. Which path did they take? Hua Qingtong hurriedly asked. They went north along the Yarqiang River. As for which path they took later, it should have been arranged by Bai Fenghua. I'm not sure, Bodo answered. I've already said what I need to say. I only asked for a quick death. All right, after you die, go and apologize to my father and brother. Hua Qingtong did not hesitate at all. He raised his knife and ended the other's life. Song Qingshu secretly clicked his tongue, as expected of a famous general who had fought on the battlefield. His decisiveness in killing was much more ferocious than his. How should we deal with these people? Hua Qingtong held his bloody sword and looked coldly at Bai Yejing and the others. Bai Yejing, Lai Rian, and the others secretly took a step back. It was a matter of life and death. Even if they knew that they couldn't win, they still had to fight. Song Qingshu looked at them indifferently. I just said that I would only kill the ringleader. You guys can leave. After all, they were from the same sect as Dan Yuru and Fu Yaoong. These two women had helped him a lot before. If he turned around and killed all the experts in their sect, it would not be very kind. Also, they were Brother Ali's subordinates. Brother Ali and Kublai were fighting fiercely. He did not want to break the balance between the two. As for the evil Buddha, Zhong Zhongyo, this shameless guy almost bullied Dan Yuru last time. He should have died long ago. Bai Yejing and Lai Rian were overjoyed. Thank you, young master. Young master, you have shown mercy today. We will definitely repay you in the future. After saying this, the two of them hurriedly left with the people from the Heaven's sect. Hua Qingtong did not say anything. Even a corner dog would jump over a wall. They were still too weak in the city. If they did not use gentle measures, it would be easy for something to happen. Next, Hua Qingtong gathered his old subordinates and started to calm the chaotic situation in the city. Song Qingshu helped to save Yuan Shishao and the others. After that, Hua Qingtong collected the remains of his father and brother. At the same time, he also buried a large number of warriors who had died in the battle. Song Qingshu invited them to temporarily stay at the Spirit Vulture Palace. The Spirit Vulture Palace was in the Heavenly Mountain and was not far from here. It was also easy to hide in the mountains. Hua Qingtong did not refuse this time. He brought the remaining people and left Yarqiang City. This was something that could not be helped. The Wooden Tribe was an internal strife, and adding on the fact that their main force had been killed in the valley, there were only the old and weak left. They had no way to fight against the incoming Mongolian army. Originally, Song Qingshu wanted to bring the Taiyin tribe with him, but when he left the city to look for them, he found that the Taiyin tribe had already left. They must have been afraid that Bodu would lead an army to take revenge after saving Man and her daughter from the city lord's palace, so they quickly left. Song Qingshu was a bit regretful. He still missed the good times he had with Li Xian, but it was a pity that he had been busy recently and had no time to find them. He could only wait for the situation to settle down and then return to the grasslands to continue their relationship. But he did not know if she would recognize him at that time. After all, she remembered the Water Moon sect. The group traveled north for a day. Hua Qingtong asked Song Qingshu to help him save his sister, Casli. Now that he was leading a large group, they could not go fast. If they delayed too long and his sister fell into Temujin's hands, then it would be too late to save her. She had wanted to go with them, but she still had to take care of the people in her tribe. She could only settle them down first and could not go with them. Song Qingshu described the location of the Spirit Vulture Palace to her in detail, then gave her the sect master's ring as a keepsake so that she would not be treated as an enemy by the people of the Spirit Vulture Palace. Hua Qingtong reluctantly said goodbye to him. The two of them could actually be considered newlyweds and were stuck together like glue. After I settle down my people, I will come find you. Song Qingshu gently stroked her hair. You don't have to be too anxious. Rest well during this time. I promise I will help you save Casli. Okay. Hua Qingtong looked at him affectionately, her eyes full of reluctance. At that moment, Yuan Shixiao walked over with his granddaughter and said, I like Casli very much too. It's a pity that I'm seriously injured and can't go with her. However, we also want to do our part. Let Zi go with you. Her martial arts are not bad. If you encounter anything, she can help you. Yuan Zi was at a loss. She kept pulling at the corner of her clothes. She was obviously very anxious. I have mentioned about the new book on the official account, Monk Lu Ru. But many readers do not follow the official account, so I will say it again. On the 21st of this month, which is this Thursday, my new book will be released on the Zongheng website and app. The old book will not be finished by then, so it will probably be open for a while. Originally, I wanted to release the new book later, or at least wait until the old book is finished. But there are new authors releasing new books every month on the website, which involves resources on the management side. My schedule is very full, so I cannot decide when to release the book. I have poured 6 years of effort into the old book, so I will definitely make sure that there will be a happy ending. Everyone can also take advantage of this time to take care of the new book. When the old book is finished, the new book will almost be fat. I hope everyone will like it. Chapter 2476. Obviously, Song Qingshu didn't expect this. He couldn't help laughing. I don't have a good reputation. If you go with me, I'm afraid that it will damage your reputation. Yuan Shixiao shook his head. That's just the misunderstanding the people have about you. Based on the few times I've come into contact with you, even though you do things in a rather eclectic manner, you are a righteous and benevolent person, or else you would not have traveled so far to provide reinforcements and become enemies with the powerful Mongolians. Am I that good? Song Qingshu was a little embarrassed after being praised by him. Yuan Shixiao said, After all, you're from the Central Plains. You're not familiar with the terrain of the Western region and don't use language to communicate with the locals. Zi grew up here and is quite familiar with this place. She can also be your guide. Besides, you're chosen by Qingtong. Even if I don't believe in my own judgment, I believe in Qingtong's judgment. You won't bully Zi. Song Qingshu originally wanted to refuse. However, when he heard Yuan Shixiao mentioning the guide, he suddenly remembered the different treatment he and Hua Qingtong received when they went to the herdsman to buy horses. He also realized how useful it was to have a guide who was familiar with the locals. Therefore, he didn't refuse anymore, but I don't know if Miss Yuan is willing to. Yuan Zi didn't expect that her grandfather would suddenly make such a request. Therefore, she was a little surprised and panicked for a while. After a while, she gradually calmed down. Casli and I are like sisters. Now that she's kidnapped, I naturally have to help her. I just hope that you don't think that I'm a burden because I'm weak in martial arts. In that case, thank you, Senior Yuan. Thank you, Miss Yuan. Song Qingshu cupped his hands in obeisance. Yuan Zi hurriedly packed up her luggage and rode a white horse. They bid farewell to the people of the Wooden Table Luan tribe and then rode north. They went north along the Yarkand River. Looking at the yellow sand in the east, they only felt that the sea of sand was boundless and human beings were insignificant. Song Qingshu couldn't help asking, What desert is over there? Yuan Zi answered, That's the Taklamakan Desert. Taklamakan means the great desert under the mountains in the Uyghur language. Don't go there. You'll definitely die there. Song Qingshu secretly clicked his tongue. In the future, technology could be used to build roads to cross the desert. In this era, it was indeed a dangerous place. By the way, Miss Yuan, you're familiar with the terrain here. Which path do you think the team escorting Castley will take? Song Qingshu asked. Yuan Zi rode her horse over and took out a map. We're heading northeast along the Yarqiang River. They must have taken the same route. Here, the Yarqiang River, Hatian River, and Aksu River will converge and form the Darim River in the east. Arquez, Song Qingshu was startled. Yuan Zi looked at him in confusion. What's wrong? Song Qingshu smiled and said, It's nothing. I just remembered that the apples there are very famous. He even started to miss the Aksu ice candy apple from his previous life. Yuan Zi's white finger continued to move to the east. Kush is in the east. They may split up here. They either go north or go east. We need to ask for directions along the way. Song Qingshu nodded with a smile. Fortunately, you're here. Otherwise, I'd be like a headless fly. It would be fine if they were in the Central Plains. However, the biggest difficulty here was the language barrier. It was inconvenient to buy food, horses, and ask directions. Fortunately, he had Hua Qingtong and Yuan Zi, so he didn't have to worry about these things on the way. Yuan Zi suddenly said with a red face, Brother Song, I've offended you before. Please don't forgive me. Song Qingshu was stunned. Why did you change your attitude so suddenly? Is it because you know you can't defeat me? Are you afraid that I'll rape and kill you in the desert? Yuan Zi rolled her eyes at him. Her eyes were full of coquettishness. No wonder Brother Song had a bad reputation in Jianghu. It's easy to be misunderstood by others when you talk like this. Song Qingshu looked at the purple-clothed girl on the back of the horse. Her figure was slender and graceful. Her waist was slender and her shoulders were thin. She looked delicate and graceful. No matter how picky he was, he had to admit that she was indeed an extremely beautiful girl. You used to misunderstand me. Why don't you now? Yuan Zi pursed her lips and smiled. There was a dimple on her left cheek. She looked very sweet. I've heard too many rumors about you. I don't know that you've done so many earth-shattering things until now. Song Qingshu put his ear close to her. What have you done? Tell me one by one. Yuan Zi was speechless. Of course, Yuan Zi was not stupid enough to tell him one by one. Besides, my grandpa praises you every time he mentions you. Sister Hua also speaks highly of you. She actually praises me behind my back? Song Qingshu was a little surprised. Hua Qingtong has been cold to me before. It turns out that she has already fallen in love with me. I'm really charming. Yes. Yuan Zi nodded. Maybe I've heard them praising you a lot. As time goes by, I become like them. Song Qingshu couldn't help saying, To be honest, I'm not used to your sudden change. Yuan Zi sighed. Brother Song, although you never said it, I could feel that you didn't like me since I saw you on Mount Amei for the first time. At that time, I was young and aggressive. Of course, I didn't treat you well. Song Qingshu was stunned. Because of the legend of the flying fox, he didn't have a good impression of Yuan Zi. Since she was a nun, why did she take the initiative to flirt with Hu Fei? Later, she competed with Cheng Lingsu for Song Qingshu's affection and left in the end. He always felt that Hu Fei was played in the palm of her hand. He didn't expect that the girl was so sensitive. She even noticed his feelings at that time. But now that he thought about it, he felt that he had wronged her. Love was a thing. If it could be completely controlled by oneself, it would not be called love. Yuan Zi, in the original novel, was also very painful. She swayed between love and faith, and finally chose faith. Song Qingshu despised himself a little. Just because the girl was pretty and begged him a little, did he change his opinion of her? Bah cheap. You just want her body. Of course, with Song Qingshu's current eyesight, he wouldn't be attracted by a girl. It was just that it was hard to hate a beautiful girl who was gentle to you. There were indeed some misunderstandings in the past, but you don't have to take it to heart. I'm a very single-minded person, and my tolerance for beautiful girls has always been very high. Song Qingshu smiled and let go of the past grievances. Yuan Zi blushed slightly, but she couldn't help but feel happy when she heard him praise her beauty. The two of them headed northeast and arrived at Kush City. From the locals, they received a shocking piece of news. Temujin, seeing that the Muzwolen tribe was in a stable position, gave up on the idea of coming to the south. He only sent a general with a group of soldiers to take over while he himself led the main force eastward. It turns out that when Kublai led his army to attack the western gate of Xixia, the Sand Continent, he suffered heavy losses. The Xixia general guarding the Sand Continent used his ruthlessness to defeat Kublai's attacks several times. During this period of time, Kublai didn't gain any achievements. The Sand Continent was the western gate of Western Xia, and it was crucial to the success or failure of the attack on Western Xia. When Temujin received the news, he immediately led the main force eastward to support Kublai, who was attacking the Sand Continent, and completely tear apart Western Xia's defenses. You're tuning in to the Warrior Lore YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.